Caroline Buchanan is in studio.
This year they've brought slopestyle for the women in for the first time. That's a whole different beast. I copped a lot of slack being that young girl growing up as BMX bandit, self-promoting herself, having her own website, like breaking the mold. He's like, look, I saw the heartache you went through. Like, I know you're the favorite, that dedication. And he's like, I want to give you $50,000. Then it was like, oh, I really want to be an Olympian. Getting there was like, yeah, that was one of the most wildest years.
Your brother raced first, and then you were just like doing whatever your brother was doing.
Yeah, he was climbing trees, I was wearing his clothes, like a little tomboy, racing BMX.
I met a gypsy.
Caroline Buchanan is in studio, and look, let's not change the pace, the sound, anything. Let's just keep going. It's just really good to see you. We haven't caught up in like a very, very long time. This has been on the cards for ages. So yeah, thanks for coming in.
It is. We've finally done it. I think maybe 8 years ago you asked me, and I was in like that transitional point of like coming out of injury, trying to make a third Olympics. And I think I remember saying to you like, let's just do the podcast in another narrative. Like, let's do it in the future. And I'm so glad, like, here we are. Kind of reinvented the script since then. Had an insane last few months with mountain biking, and here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I say that to everybody. Like, people always ask, oh, how do you book them? And how's it, how do you get guests? I'm like, sometimes it's like years and years in the making, because I've got a busy schedule. They've got a busy schedule, timing, events, and, these are actually very hard to make happen. And this is like inside baseball for people that listen to a lot of the podcasts. But I think that's why a lot of times it just ends up being such a fun, good chat, because like we've been friends for years, but we never get to talk. So this is going to be cool.
Yes, very small industry. Very jealous in America right now. Living there for 10 years, it was definitely for action sport and the home and birthplace of BMX. And for me, growing up in BMX, to live over there, that was a huge part of like my career. And at 18 years old as a girl going like, see mom, see dad, like moving to America to benefit my career. And 10 years, 28, I decided to move back. And I think it really was like to put yourself where the industry is, where those sponsors are. I had Bell up the road, I had Oakley across the mountain, I had Fast House. So it's just like at any given moment you can go and pick up those packages, build those relationships, just really be like one-on-one. And I think definitely for that action sport world, like you've got to place yourself where the people are.
It is crazy, eh? Like even my wife and I, we were just in Dubai, and then we were supposed to go to Dubai for a month and then go back to Oz. And I got to Dubai and I was like, no, we got to go back. Like there's just way too much going on, and in such a good way. But I mean, Australia's also a pretty epic place to live in terms of like lifestyle, and so I don't know, it's hard to manage that too sometimes.
Yeah, well I think now, like especially for me, the flexibility of, I think when you get to a certain point and you've like built those relationships with brands, built a lot of success now with social media too, you can really have that brand presence from anywhere in the world. So I think it's come a long way that you can really work from anywhere, be anywhere. So now I do a lot of fly in, fly outs to the Crankworks World Tour, jump on those mountain bike events, jump on those speaking tours, and then go back home to Canberra, which a lot of people say is pretty boring, but it's my zen, like absolute downtime.
It's crazy what a place does in terms of vibe and like the way that it kind of like radiates into you. Like when we would go between California and Dubai and Australia, and like when you're in one place for a very long time, it just becomes very baseline and you're not extremely aware of it. But as soon as you do travel around and you stay in different places, like you realize how much there is like either a calming effect or there's a very high, maybe frequencies is like the best way to say it, where it's like really high frequency or really low frequency. And low frequency that's not a bad thing.
Yes, especially I think when you're in an action sport world. And for me, definitely now that I'm more in that like freestyle, slopestyle element, and being a female in action sport, I find you're always in that fight and flight frequency where it's like when I come into an event and I'm like a week on at Crankworks and you got the sponsorships and you're doing signing and then you're doing a bit of media and then you've got, you know, speed and style and you've got slope style and you're like sending Superman seat grabs and, you know, you're on that little like cusp of like real danger.
Yeah.
It is. It's like it takes so much out of you. So when you go home and you're like, all right, low, I want to go back into like a real neutral, calm. Everyone's at work 9 to 5. I'm waking up to my ice bath. I'm borderline bored, but I'm like, I'm down because I'm coming back up.
Yeah. How do you feel in those moments? Because that's one of my bigger challenges is to when it is that, because it's like we're talking about it and it's like makes sense to us and we're like, yeah, when you've got all these highs, you need the lows. But then so much of the time when I'm chilling, I feel shit.
Can relate. I think half the action sport world is self-medicating their ADHD through adrenaline and sport. So yeah, granted, it's like I've always been one to be like, yeah, BMX and then race and then freestyle and then mountain bike and I want to take on 5 different disciplines and like that's just my personality and I've always been, you know, like this. But I think, yeah, the challenge is actually to sit still and to slow down and to have those like time block a bit of structure into your day to go, all right, now like I'm going to work and I'm going to do my training and I'm going to go do this. But if you actually structure that, you know what, I'm just going to like do my ice bath this morning. I'm just going to sit with my feet in a foot bath for an hour. I'm going to not touch my phone. Like for me, that's a big challenge to do, but it is now we're like looking back, that's the longevity in sport. So to start at 9 years old for me and start traveling the world and now I'm 33 still doing it for a living, I think that longevity comes from going, all right, look after your body, look after the recovery. And I think for now, like, when you hit that point in your career, now it's a lot more for me, like recovery when I do come home. Definitely got to prioritize that a lot more.
Yeah. And have you found that you got better with doing the downtime stuff as you got older? It's like a bit more maturity, you figure out like, okay, this is actually helpful as much as the action side of action sports is helpful. Like the inaction side also does push the action forward.
It's a work in progress, hey?
Yeah.
It's a work in progress for all of us.
I'm trying to get advice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely trying to still navigate that daily. But it really is. It's what you need when you come into an event. Otherwise, you just hit absolute burnout. And I went through a big burnout stage when I came back from my big injury that I had that put me out of sport for 2 years. And when I did come back in 2019 to try and hit my 3rd Olympic Games, train for Tokyo, and missed out, I actually went through a whole stint of like chronic fatigue and Epstein-Barr and just like could not train. So I really had to like take a sit back and go, I need to get in hyperbaric chambers. I need to really dive into my nutrition, really work on my recovery, and like had this whole newfound respect for like the immune system. And really like I'd been operating for so many years of just like pinned fight, flight, go, world titles, Olympics. But yeah, at some point you've got to break. And I think when you have injuries, and then you go through like everything that sort of destroys your gut as well, as what I realized. Like you have all those antibiotics and you're going through, I had 13 plus surgeries over 3 years, and yeah, you just go, all right, well, I've got to rebuild my everything from the inside out, including your gut health. So definitely respect the human body.
Do you take like AG1 or anything?
No, but I have in the past definitely gone down that route. I would say I'm like 80% plant-based diet, really try to dive into just like real food and hydration. Yeah. Yes. Limiting, obviously inflammation. I really found like recovering from big surgeries or accidents or even traveling so much, even being like an athlete, I guess an older athlete, like when you're 33 and you're competing against 16-year-old Red Bull kids, it's like, you can't have anything that's just like inflaming your system, because you got to work 10 times harder to back it up 2-3 days in a row at a competition. Or if you do have a crash and you hit the ground, like crashed a front flip yesterday, and granted, like you bail and you get out of it and you get back up and you're like, oh, corked my ass a little bit. But besides that, it's like, we're good, we're flexible. So yeah, flexibility, I think, definitely tapped into that over the last few years too.
Yeah. It's just funny, like probably getting older probably makes it sound worse than it is, but it's like you just get more and more experience, and then you realize, like, I think that whole nervous system piece, like that you just spoke about, like even when I started wearing a Garmin, and you've got the stress meter, and I just would wear a Garmin basically 24/7 that I've got my Garmin on. And it's like, even when you start seeing stress and you're like, I'm chilling, I should just be chilling, but you're like on the couch watching TV or looking at your phone, and then your stress is like up high, and that is your nervous system being like upregulated essentially. So it's just like you're chilling, quote unquote, sitting on the couch, but it's like you're ready for action. There's a real conscious effort. And I think as you get a little bit older and you like learn your body more, you literally just have more time in your body, you start to learn like, there's more to just sitting still than sitting still. Like there's a way that you can breathe, and like, are you nasal breathing? Are you mouth breathing? Are you chest breathing? Is it, like you can get so into, I guess, even just like your own experience in a sense, where you can actually make sure when I'm relaxing, I am relaxing. I'm not just sitting on a couch mentally freaking out, keeping myself in that fight or flight state until I'm ready to like do the next thing. That's been maybe one of my biggest learnings over the last few years.
Yeah, huge. I've been very fortunate with like the people I've surrounded myself with, and through like high performance sport with the Australian whole BMX Olympic team side, they definitely like just set you up with biomechanics people and recovery and sleep and like you name it, like learnt so much there. And then more recently paired up with a guy who works with like Mick Fanning and a lot of the Red Bull athletes, Nam. And like Nam,
I've heard of him.
Absolute gem. He's up here on the Gold Coast, and he took it from a different perspective with me of, when I first went to him, I was in that transitional point of wanting to reinvent my career. This was 2020. The world's gone to sleep, and I didn't want to sleep. I wanted to like tap into this whole next challenge. My body didn't come back from injury, so I didn't make that third Olympic Games, and that was a real pivoting point in my career. And I said, all right, I want to dive into mountain biking. There's this like cool opportunity. There's this door open for women's freeride, and that was when the Audi 9 said, women's freeride for mountain biking, we're doing slopestyle. And I just saw like, whilst I knew longevity, like, yeah, I don't want to be doing like triple backflips and all this stuff in the future, but the sport really needed that face. They needed the girls, they needed that depth. And seeing that opportunity, I went to Nam and I said, goals that always terrify me and excite me, like that's what I lean into. And I was like, I've been this racer, like bread and butter my entire life, but I'm really good at mountain biking, so like let's just join the two together. I really want to tap into freestyle. I know that I'm going to be uncomfortable, so like how can we reframe some of my mindset to be like so clear on the task coming up? And I think the best advice he ever gave me was, he said, if you can get so clear with your why, like why you're on this planet, why you do what you do. And he said, if you get that unshakable clarity with your why, anytime you have an injury, anytime you think, do I really need to do a world's first front flip in Germany? It's COVID. I'm quarantining in 2 weeks. If I get injured, I'm going to be locked in a hotel room by myself. Like, the fear comes in. It's like, if you're unshakable with that why, you go, well, this is why I'm doing it. And you come back, and yeah, he really helped me with that. And even going through like NLP tapping. So I'd like tap my why into me every day. And then like, I've just found that overrides so much doubt, so much insecurity. So when you're saying the stress comes in when you are sitting at home or when you're coming into an event or whatever it is, you're easily able to like deregulate it, and you just go, all right, boom, what was my why again? Come back to it.
Yeah, and that's like a practice, right? Like you're not just good at that straight away.
No, not at all. Like I think it is. I think for me, when I had my accident and like almost lost my life, and you have a whole different like spirituality side kick in. For me, I think the spirituality side came in, and that little bit openness to go, all right, like I've been this like, yeah, hardcore, like BMX Olympian, shred, yeah. And then when you tame it back, it's like, well, actually the soft side of like, how do you drop into your feminine? Why are you here? Like, what have you been put in this earth to do? And like, bridge the gap of females in this male dominated industry. That you're living out your talents for yourself and for the world. You see this like bigger purpose of like sport and a global language. And I think all of that for me definitely just elevated the ability to go, all right, I've won 8 world titles. I've gone to 2 Olympic Games. I could be done, but hey, I still want to like do world first front flips. I still want to like win Queen of Crankworks titles and come back to my why, like one of the most successful multidiscipline cycling athletes in my generation. So yeah, it like reminds you of like those major goals and just sticking to the process, relaxing into the process, and then that those outcomes are going to happen.
How do you think the average person would like integrate goals into their life? Because there's two. I like a goal, right? Or I like to basically, my thing that helps me is like, I'll enter this competition, I'll enter this race, I'll like a marathon, whatever it is, I'll like enter it. And then that's the thing. There's like enough in that to where I get like crazy anxiety about it. I'm like, fuck, okay, you need to run or you need to write. Like that's what brings it out of me. Like I'm not really the get up every day and just do it because kind of guy,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there's this different, but then you have other people where they're like, they would rather just get up every day, do their thing, and if they do something along the way, then like so be it. But by putting the goal in front of them or putting the target, it gives them the anxiety that makes them go the opposite direction. Like what's your take on that, and what do you think like quote unquote average people, like where they stand on that?
Yeah, well, I can totally resonate with like what you're saying, because I think when you're a professional athlete, you're forced to like, that's your norm. It's like you are uncomfortable daily. And so your program, and it's like that marathon is every week. It's not. So what you're saying is it's constant. It's like if you don't show up today to your training, if you don't show up for your sponsors, if you don't, uphold that level of your brand or that success, that's that constant marathon. So it's really successes on you, failures on you. And that I think is more of over time, like the professional athlete side. But I think when you're coming back to saying like, the normal, like setting goals, and when you do just go, I need to get uncomfortable. So I'm going to set this goal of let's do a half marathon in 4 weeks time. Better start training, better start prioritizing my sleep, my rest, my recovery, and you hit that anxiety and you like dive in. You've got that goal that scares you, excites you, like let's lean into discomfort. For me, I reckon the more times you can like tap into that discomfort daily only builds that resilience. And then it really builds your body to go, oh, well, if I just woke up and did that ice bath for 4 minutes and I've had that stress tolerance. Oh, I just said yes to something that I wouldn't normally say yes to. Like I've watched my friends' kids. Oh, wouldn't normally do that. Like it can be like the most absolute basic level of like human motherhood. I think the more times you say yes, it's like, I'm uncomfortable, I'm nervous, I'm excited. And then you just build that resilience up and up and again. It's like that layers of the cake. So I would say it's definitely just saying yes to opportunities, leaning in. And if you like see a goal and opportunity and it like makes you uncomfortable, then just like sign up to it. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, because the growth is in that, like they say, growth is outside your comfort zone. It's like it's very, very hard to progress when you're just doing the same thing that you've always done, and I think it's just maybe I could see why it is hard for people to take on though. Like it definitely, no one wants to feel uncomfortable.
No, but also like telling someone too, just holding yourself accountable. That's a big part. So you tell someone your dream, you tell someone your goal, instantly like, hey, did you do that today? And you're like, no. But I think from more the high performance side, like for me, what always helped was I had like a focus board in my room always growing up. So it was a whiteboard, or moved to America and it was like on a big window, or had like a mirror. It's kind of like changed over time. But that would have everything from like big visualization. So I'd have like the cups and the world championships and the Olympic rings, and it would be like visual. Then I'd have like, the Slave 5. So it was like 5 things I needed to get done that week. put them down, and it can be like life, like accounting, banking, do this or this proposal. And then I'd have like the week layout of training. So what I would call this is, it's not only my focus board, it's like accountability mirror, because you don't really get what you want, you get what you are and what you're doing. So that accountability mirror goes, well, if I'm focused on my goals, if I'm doing the things that need to get done in my life, if I'm ticking off the content side, so I'd have like my 14 contracts, and I'd have all the brands lined out, and I'd have the videographers and the photographers and like who I'm working with. And so it'd be like, all right, well, if I'm ticking off the content deliverables, I'm ticking off my weekly like training, so you've got like the layout of everything, then it's like that accountability goes, that's the process. If I stick to this formula, the outcome's going to happen. And, 9 times out of 10 it was being the best in the world consistently year after year.
Man, it's awesome. Like, it's so cool to hear you lay it out like that. And it's so true in that what you get in your life is just who you are every single day. Like, and who you are right now in life is a result of what you've done up until now. Like, we've just got a new guy that started working for us, and he's like a younger guy, and we were just talking about life, and we're talking about, just life in general. I'm like, hey bro, I just want to let you in on like a little secret. This is what nobody wants to tell you. It's so fucking easy to be a gangster. Like, it's so easy to have a gangster life, because you just write out the things that it would take for you to get to where you want to be, and then you do those things, and then you get to where you want to be. Like, it's almost seems too good to be true. It almost seems too easy, but you can apply it to literally anything in your life. And it's like, you've done that. Sammy's done that. Like, all these people that we know around us that have got to where they got to, it's like no one just picks you up and plonks you in the future with everything laid out and done. It's like there's just these things that you have to do along the way, and if you like keep ticking those boxes over a long enough period of time, you just end up being that person.
Yeah, it's no get rich quick kind of scheme. It's a long grind and a long burn, but it's the fundamentals of that vision board. It's that accountability mirror. It's doing those things daily. The only 2 things that you can really control, and when I went through my injury and was out of my sport for 2 years, it was like you can only control your effort and your attitude. And so it was like when I couldn't control that, like I couldn't do my sport for 2 years, and it's like, but if I show up constantly for myself and for the people around me, and if I am in control of like my attitude daily, and I just become grateful for, whether it was the support staff or like the surgeons or anything, like it just switches that up. So I think, if you focus on like your effort and your attitude, then the only thing is you can control. But also too, like been speaking about it with a few people lately, like there is this like big correlation with like action sport as well. We are so present, but we are so like pinned at the same time. And it does take a certain personality that has this like ADHD, bit of OCD, like you have this like hyper focus, you have this insane drive that everyone's like, where does that come from? But I think when you strip it all back, it's how you do anything is like how you do everything. So how you wake up in the morning, make your bed, like the effort into like what you're consuming into your body, the effort into like, looking after your garage, looking after your bikes, your componentry, that all is like the framework to set up the day to go and do your training, to ride your bike the best, how you treat people, your sponsors, like how you do anything is how you do everything. So it's like how you do one thing is how you're going to do 25 things. And once you start slacking on that one little thing, you start slacking on 10 things. And I think that's what derails the larger picture when you are trying to achieve big goals, you are trying to operate at such a high level. If you've like gotten lazy on a few little things, it's going to show. So I think for me, like I always remind myself when I get terrified. So like I took on this Olympic role, and it's my 3rd time Olympics, going for Channel 9 to Paris to do broadcast, and terrified. Like everything in my body said, no, you've never co-commentated, you've never really done a job on this level. You don't know skateboarding. You really don't know freestyle BMX that well. I was like, nah, want to lean out. But by leaning in and going, okay, well, if I can just one bite at a time, one piece at a time.
Just break it down. What's the process?
Break it down to the process. It's like, you'll get there. Yeah.
Oh, that's so sick. Yeah, it's just cool it's very cool, like, to hear someone like yourself that is been doing this from such a young age, right? So you're like an 9-year-old girl that has these goals of, being the best in the world. So you've come at this, like, I think I've come at this through just like fucking up over time. Like just years and years of fucking shit up. And it's like, you have actually come through this with like years of dedication and practice. And so it's like, people should definitely listen to you when you say this stuff,
I've made a lot of mistakes in life.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all do.
We all
but
do.
it's like,
The men I've dated life.
It happens. But I think it's just cool when someone like you can just lay out like, I had this visual goals and then I had this mirror that I would do. And it's like step by step by step. Like people can just go back, rewind like the last 10 minutes and just write down what you said. And if you stick to that, those goals, you will get so much closer to those goals than you are right now. And I think honestly, sometimes it's just quite hard to know what the right thing to do is and what the right thing to work on is. Like there's a really great podcast that I listen to it constantly. It's by this guy Naval Ravikant. He's an Indian immigrant and he's like a massive tech investor. The dude's a billionaire, and he just put out like this amazing podcast, How to Get Rich, every episode. It was like this tweet storm of like 300 and something tweets, and he broke it all down, and it's clickbaity. It's basically about like the way that you can generate income in this like modern age, and so many just like life principles around work, and so he lays out like this full framework for like just the goal setting and all this sort of stuff. But he basically just says like hard work isn't actually the thing that's most important. It's what you work on. So you could have Elon Musk, he's got the same 24 hours in a day, right? And if he works 16 hours a day, that's hard work. There can be a guy that owns a grocery store around the corner that works 16 hours, probably harder than Elon Musk. But the return that those two people are going to make on their 16 hours worth of time, it's got nothing to do with how hard they worked. It's what they worked on. And I think a person's life is the same. So it's like, if you think about your life in that same way, it's like, what are you working on? Because there's 24 hours a day and you can work super hard doing something that's not going to yield literally any results for your life, And so I think kind of the challenge is for people is just, you can like, even if you hear, my take on it, it's like, unless you hear the way that you framed it, I did this, and this. It's like, some people just don't know what to work on, and it seems like you knew what you wanted to work on from a very young age. And I think that also plays like a massive role in where you end up.
I think you do, but it's also taking risks and to not be afraid to like take a few risks too. But it's also like, you never know what's going to pay off. And I think for me, I always reminded myself of that. It's like that hustle and that grind, you never know what having that conversation with that person at a bar is going to lead to. It might end up to a Trek deal. As an example, like that's how my Trek sponsorship came about. There was a conversation at a bar. I was injured at the time. I put myself in the environment that I needed to be in. I was at Seattle, one of the biggest trade shows in the world. I had a wine at the bar, and I was like, hey, what do? You're uncomfortable, right? And it's like, you're vulnerable. I've just come back from injury. These are one of my goals. Like, I want to ride for you. Don't pay me. No expectations. But hey, got that bike. I'm now going to over-deliver. And, you over-deliver, and then you like sign that contract with a brand like Trek, and you have that partnership for life. So I think those moments are like really what changes it. And you never know if that conversation's going to go somewhere, but if you lean in, you get uncomfortable and you do everything, it's like, and you take those risks, you never know how it's going to pay off. So I think it's all, for me, it's like always been a bit of a learning to go, what hustle is going to pay off on the bike, what hustle is going to pay off the bike, but equally like what you do on and what you do off nowadays, it's like so much a part of like making a business out of the sport, having financial freedom, and then also setting up your future as well and laying those legacies, starting foundations for like girls and, you know, what that future is. So yeah, I would say like no one knows, but if you can continue getting uncomfortable, if you continue just like taking those opportunities and leaning in and, as I said, doing everything well, because how you do anything is how you do everything. It's just like that simple formula. Like it comes back to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool. And so there's like so many ways to take this conversation because you've been successful on so many different levels. But I think one thing that probably cannot be understated, like we can get into all the athlete stuff later, but you've really been like a powerhouse of brand deals, collabs, content, like way before it was quote unquote normal and like basically required. Like you really have been nailing that for a very long time.
Yeah, pre-social media, I guess, when it was cool to self-promote. Like, I copped a lot of slack being that young girl growing up as BMX bandit, self-promoting
Really?
herself, having her own website, like breaking the mold, having that unit merch deal when I was 16 years old at the BMX track and selling it. Like, yeah, you know, it wasn't easy. And it was definitely like, you know, I had even federations like I was cycling being like, why do you have your own website? Like, you know, your bio's on our website. Like it was just constantly breaking the mold. As I said, it wasn't heard of. So yeah, I think going back to the original days, like my dad, he's in IT and he was like, if you're going to make a career out of being a BMX bandit, like you got to learn the business side. And I think having him and other mentors around me that really guided me, like one of my mentors, Tim Chad, when I was still in school, he would like help me with like, I'd get home from school and be like, can you add 200 people on LinkedIn today? Can you like, here's a template on like, this is how you write an email to a sponsor. You know, it was just like framework of like, let's just dive into the hustle. Let's make a template on, you know, back then it was like before even Photoshop and before all these MailChimps and before all these EDM things came out. It was like, you know, we were just like winging it. We were going, let's make our own template. Let's communicate with sponsors this way. It was like, you know, when you used to like max out the emails and things like that, you'd send it off. So I think having those really good people and mentors and everything, like that was the foundation that got me into this hustle and started getting these brand deals, because ultimately like it was really hard to be what you couldn't see. And I couldn't see that future of a female making a career out of this sport. So that's been like my big passion of when Lane Beachley looked after me through her scholarship foundation and said, I believe in you. Like I'm a 7-time world champion, but like you're gonna surpass that, and I believe in you. I'm here for you. That obviously made me go, all right, well, like what's my influence going to be in the sport, and how can I set up Ignite and scholarships and give back and kind of lead from the bench, as well as like building the identity of the sport, because the identity of BMX needed to grow to even get on that mainstream platform. So I had, you know, media liaisons that when I like won a World Cup overseas, they were like driving that content when the footy show was on and when, you know, everything was going on to like Fox Sport on a Monday. She was packaging that content to say like Caroline Buchanan just won a World Cup in Manchester. So it was all so formulated and effort driven because we knew, hey, I'm trying to make a career out of something that doesn't exist. I'm trying to find a pathway from a sport that doesn't have mainstream identity. But, you know, I really want to be that Nutrigrain girl. I really want to be the face of Boost Mobile. I really want to have a 17-year contract with Oakley. Like, this is the future. So, like, what do you need to do? And fortunate that I just got some amazing people around me. And, you know, I spent the first 8 years of my professional career really not making a solid income. I was just investing everything back into me as that personal brand. Get a bit of capital, put it back into a global TV series, take a risk. This is all my money, 30 grand, let's go IMG. Like, let's capture a whole World Cup series. Let's get it onto KLM United, Qantas, all these airways, in-flight entertainment. Like, let's get a few sponsors like Subaru and people behind it. No idea if it's going to pay off, but it all does. Like, as I said, you got to take those risks. You got to lean in, and the effort that I've put back into myself as that brand, the effort I've put into raising the identity of the sport, has now led to like awesomely a really cool career pathway for women and men growing up here in Australia to do BMX and mountain biking and have partnership deals with brands. And I guess now they can see, because I couldn't see what I wanted to be, but they can see the opportunities that are out there.
It's honestly so cool. Like, you deserve a lot of credit for that. Like, I mean, yeah, I've known you for a very long time, and it's just you've been doing that for years and years and years and years. And it's like, you do make it look very easy, but I'm sure it was not easy. Like, you literally came from nowhere with this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like anything, you have your days, but if you do it compounded over all those years, it makes it easier because you've already done that TV show. So now, like, this next campaign's easy. They all grow on each other. And I think now it's like I'm really looking at it from another lens of going, where's the industry now and how can I continue to help? Because it's a different landscape. Like, what I went through is different to now what athletes today need to go through, because they do have technology and social media, and it is very different. And I think brands' expectations are different, and it's a lot more saturated market. So I think I'm now looking at it from that perspective of going like, oh, like online masterclasses, and like, how can I make this potentially online to framework an opportunity for the future 10-year-old skateboarder or the 13-year-old cricket girl in Australia to be able to go, all right, I'm going to buy Caroline Buchanan's program, and this is a roadmap, and like, hey, here's a Canva template on your resume. Hey, here's how to write an email. You know, just the basics, like hustle, brand reach out, the focus boards, everything that goes into it to manage being a professional athlete. I think, yeah, throwing it out there, holding myself accountable, like, I think that's probably something that I definitely want to do over the next like 6 to 12 months, because I think it's the future.
Oh man, yeah, 100%. So, where did everything start for you? Like, how did you get into this as a girl growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s? Like, not a huge amount of girls making a living in action sports, BMX. Like, what was the catalyst? Where did you start? How did you get into it?
Yeah, well, the beginning was 1990 was when I was born. The moment that, I guess, when people ask, like, when did your parents know that you were going to be this athlete? I was 3 years old. We were walking through the Video Easy store, and my parents thought, getting the VHS back then. And they're like, oh, like this little 3-year-old girl, she's going to get some Disney movie. And Mum turned around, and I was doing gymnastics at the time, and I had this, like, Nadia Comaneci Perfect 10 gymnastics doco. And I watched that on repeat. It was this perfect 10 score at the Olympics over and over. So I think my parents knew then, like, wow, like, she's obsessive about, like, sport, and she loves gymnastics, and she's watching this doco over and over, and she's 3. So I think that was the sort of the beginning of getting into, like, different sports. I was 5 when I followed my brother into BMX racing. And I really, as an athlete, like, I just really was drawn towards individual sports. Like, I love that if you lost that race, it's completely on you. If you won that race, it's on you. So I love the adrenaline side of, like, action sport and just, like, BMX. It wasn't until I was 15 that I actually lost a bet with a friend, and he had to come to a BMX event and I had to go to a mountain bike event. So I didn't find mountain biking until I was 15. I'm really glad now, because that became, I think, my longevity, but it just became like the fun. It became like when I was going to an Olympic Games and everything's so serious and high performance and wear this, eat this, do this, say this. I could go and, like, switch off in that 4-year period before our next Olympics and do mountain biking. And it was like, you're in the mountains, you're in Whistler, Canada, you're doing downhill, 4-cross, pump track. Like, you're having a fat time. It's so fun. And yeah, so I think that just that balance of finding mountain biking, that's sort of the beginnings. And now today, like, I officially retired from BMX in 2020 after I didn't make that 3rd Olympics, and finally, like, sort of, I guess, put from doing both disciplines over all the years, and then finally just going like, all right, like, it's really time to dive into mountain biking and give some of these titles, like the overall Queen of Crankworks, a really good go. Here we are now, just full-time mountain biking.
That's so sick. So your brother raced first, and then you were just, like, doing whatever your brother was doing.
Yeah, he was climbing trees. I was wearing his clothes, like a little tomboy, racing BMX. Yeah.
And what were the early, like, how many girls were racing when you first started?
So 1995, 5 years old, Canberra BMX track in Canberra. There would have been maybe one older girl. So like all the posters on my walls were like the boys. I just aspired to them. I actually raced them until I was 11 years old. So they,
Yeah.
like we didn't really have like a girls class. So yeah, I raced the boys and they would elbow me and like send me over turns. Like they wouldn't even treat me like a girl. They'd just be like, "You're one of us." Head to head racing, like no white lines. So yeah, that was quite brutal initially, but it just strengthened me, I think. And then once I did start racing the girls, it was state, national, world. Started learning like, how to win and then how to win consistently.
And then, so when did you ever get, like, I'm assuming you would have got into like the Oz cycling programs and stuff like that, because I think that's one of the cool things, like, obviously with us and moto, I mean, there is like a Australian Institute of Sport for motocross and stuff, but it's like, I don't know, I feel like the Cycling Australia, it's like a very, very well-oiled machine at this point. And does that do a lot for you when you're a young kid to be involved in those kind of programs? Even when it comes to like the goal setting and the training and it's got to be super helpful.
Yeah, it teaches you how to be an elite
athlete, I guess.
Athlete. Yeah, it does. It basically gives you the tools to do that. I think looking at the success of my career now, I love that mountain biking isn't sanctioned. It's like it's its own program. It's more X Games. It's more privately run. It's it's half owned by a production company, Boombox, so it's very heavy on the content side. I think that is also super important from like the brand and also just like longevity perspective of racing. I'm glad that I did the Olympic Games, and I'm glad I came through the AST Academy of Sport, through the Australian Institute of Sport, through into the Australian cycling program, all the way through into the Olympic Games. Like, it is that trajectory and that funnel. There is a lot that like comes from those opportunities to like wear green and gold for Australia. But it's like, for me, it was a short-term window. Like, I don't think I could have done that 15 years. Whereas I think it's like when you spread it out over BMX, mountain biking, for a personality like me, and everyone's got to lean into their own skill set and personality, I think splitting the two and having both, super grateful for like both opportunities.
Yeah, because I feel like when you do get into those AIS kind of scenarios, you are like pretty boxed in. So I actually can see both. Like, I could see how it would be very helpful in some ways, but then also like kind of restrictive and like not fun in a lot of other ways.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I remember like one time I was going out for a World Cup for BMX racing, and as I said, I'm trying to benefit the career of BMX, and I've got this Subaru partnership. No, sorry, it was Mitsubishi partnership. So I had this big Mitsubishi logo on my pants at the time, but the Australian cycling program was supported by like Subaru. So, I'm going up for like a semi-final, and like the head program manager's like taping my pants on the way up, and I'm like, like I think I did a really good race because I was angry and I was fired up. So I was like, watch me. So obviously like use it as fuel, but it was like there was much more like strict guidelines to sport. So whilst it brought so much, I think from like when you're an individual athlete, you don't have that team to rely on. So you don't have like a football team, you don't have the massage, you don't have the sports staff, you don't have them, you don't have that base salary, you don't have any of that. So it's like you've got to run your own program.
So piecemeal.
Yeah, so I think when you treat it as like a brand and you're like the same thing for an athlete, having that little bit more flexibility and freedom to your like calendar and your support and who you are and what you do long time is a lot easier. But super grateful for like, Australian sport. And then even seeing now, we were the first Olympic like summer games BMX racing. We were the outcasts. We were the BMX bandits on the block. Like, snow sports and the Winter Olympics, they had all these action sports, but the Summer Olympics, it was that they were the OG. And when BMX racing came in, it was like there wasn't what there is now with freestyle BMX and skateboarding, breakdancing, speed climbing, 4x4 basketball. Like now they've got a whole urban complex in Paris where they've realized like the future is in those urban sports. They're building those complexes so that it's like they can get reused and they're sustainable and they can reuse them for the village in the future. So yeah, now it's like epic. And even training with the freestyle BMX program here on the Gold Coast this week and seeing Logan Martin and seeing what like a gold medal can do.
Dude.
Like it's come a long way, that high performance program, from when I was in it, like even 8 years ago.
Man, how's just the level of Logan and the Aussie boys? Like, it is crazy how good those guys are.
It is. I'm looking forward to being over there and being able to interview them on the finish line when they compete and bring that broadcast back for Channel 9. Because I think, yeah, like there's so many great stories and they're on such a level that any of those 3-4 guys could go. Like we've got 2 incredible girls in Australia, but maybe only one will go. That's the challenge about Olympic Games, is they have those quota spots. And then the even more challenging part that's been thrown into this Olympic Games is now they're going over for what's called a qualifying series. So they've got Shanghai and Budapest coming up, and it's not what they've done on the World Cup tour. It's now coming into a point of going, you know, we're going to even the playing field for the world and coming into like these 2 qualifying events. And they've done that for skate, for breakdancing, for freestyle BMX. And yeah, it's like all your points are in that. So if you're injured, like coming in, you could miss out on Olympic Games despite of being an incredible athlete 2 years out. So yeah, sort of seeing the stress a little bit of like this unknown, but also seeing how good that's going to be to prepare the athletes in that high stress environment to then perform at Olympics.
Yeah. When did the Olympics first enter your mind? So I had a friend when I was growing up and he was a swimmer. And we did literally our entire school together from primary all the way to the end of high school. And he was just going to the Olympics. His whole life he was going to the Olympics, like in his mind. And the other people that I know that have gone to the Olympics, it's like at some point they were just like, oh yeah, I'm going to the Olympics. Was it like that for you?
It didn't exist in the beginning. So
Yeah,
it actually,
fair.
BMX
So it was
racing, it wasn't an Olympic sport. So I think for me it was like, I more wanted to just race BMX. You know, I wanted to be that world champion. That was more like the goal. When it shifted into being an Olympic sport, the actual sport changed. So it went from being like that flat track racing to all of a sudden we're dropping in off a 3-story building. We're jumping big 13-meter jumps. The sport really elevated. I'm really glad that I was part of that like trajectory and to learn. But yeah, I think it wasn't on the horizon. So when it actually became the norm and it became part of our program, then it was like, oh, I really want to be an Olympian. Getting there was like, that was one of the most wildest years of my life. Going to first Olympic Games, 2012, David Beckham staring back at me, choking on the, favorite and then choking in the final moment. And just missing my gate and missing those medals. But it was a whole new, like, how do you prepare yourself to have like royal family, David Beckham, you're the favorite, and all of a sudden I'm like,
So walk us through that first Olympic Games then.
Yeah, so first Olympic Games for me, too young for Beijing, which was the 2008 Olympic Games. So 2012 London, came in as the world champion, won the time trial, which was like the fastest time around the track. So knew I had the track speed. My goal was obviously to get to the final, to win that Olympic Games moment. What I think went wrong for me and what I've learned now is I didn't have that belief in myself I could actually do it. So to go all the way through, I hadn't visualized like I'd set that goal and I want to, but I hadn't had that self-belief to go, all right, when I'm finally there and I'm like, chose lane 1, to stay in that like offensive play mindset. I definitely when I won the quarterfinal, first lane pick, won the semi-final, inside again, whole shot, boom, out in front, out of trouble, gone, lap, easy, job done. Go up for the final and I instantly shifted into a defensive mindset. So I went from being on the offense, goal-driven, process, and then went up for the final and it went defense. I went, oh wow, I've done everything. this is my race to lose. I started thinking about my competitors. I started thinking about, the great British girl that was sponsored by Visa and Red Bull and carried the flag for the country, and David Beckham staring back at me, the royal family, and 10,000 people, and oh my God, and if I win the Olympics, like, I'm going to get this thing and this bonus and like whatever. And I was like, I've already lost.
Yeah.
It's not about that. And so when I went defense, I then was like, oh, well, I don't want to get cut off by, the 80 kilo like girl in lane 1, and I'm only 63 kilos. And I instantly went, oh, they're going to beat me. So I chose lane 3. I missed my start. I got cut off 7th in the first turn, fought back to 5th, and like watched those medals in front of me. So from that, it was like I took that mindset the following year, won the world title, beat the Olympic champion within 8 months, and was like, the only difference was I went back into offense. I went back into process, went back into like breathing into my chi on the start gate. I went back into like dialing in, just the process driven. And then I had one of the easiest laps of my life at the World Championships and won and turned around and seen the Olympic champion. And I was like, if that was 8 months ago, that was an Olympic Games. Like, and the only shift was offense, defense.
My mentality. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too, there's something to visualizing. It's really cool how you said that. Like, I didn't visualize it to the end. It's like sometimes you can, you'll just see something up to a point, and it's that last little bit. Like that's the goal. That's the thing. It's like, duh, that's what I want. But it's like, how much time did you spend sitting there like with that gold medal? Like, you know what I mean? Because there is something to like really feeling that, like really thinking, not like the way that you explained it of, oh, I could, I'll get this and I'll get that and I'll get this. But like, okay, I'm sitting on a podium and I'm like, it's just me and there's a gold medal around my chest. Like, fuck. Like, and actually really internalizing that, because I could really see how if you didn't live in that moment, like actually live in that moment, you could get to that moment and be like, oh shit, like it's almost a surprise, even though it was your goal this whole time.
Yeah. So to normalize that, I think if like, for example, if you're signing up for a marathon or half marathon, Ironman, and I really want to do it, and you think you stick to all the process, you've done your training, you get there. There's so much power in visualizing yourself running across that finish line.
Yeah.
And like hugging your family and like, turning off your Garmin. You need to visualize like getting there, because when those demons hit and you're like 10K out and you're like, can I do this? It's like, no, I visualized it. I know what it feels like. I can do it. I don't have limiting beliefs. I'm offensive again. So you don't shift defense. You just like, you own it and lean in.
Yeah, and that limiting beliefs piece is so crucial. Like, people have the level of limiting beliefs that people have in their everyday life. Like, if you actually categorized your thoughts and what you believed in, like, and this is based on my own conversations and the conversations that I have with people around me. Oh yeah, I'm not a very good reader. It's like, no shit. If that's what you tell yourself, like if that's what you think, then like that's what you are, and it's like the I think therefore I am. It's like Descartes, one of the oldest, most famous quotes of all time. It's like, you literally are your thoughts. And if you hold these beliefs about yourself, like if you think you can do something, you're right. If you think you can't do something, you're right. Like, it's so important, but it's so overlooked. I mean, obviously it's a shitty situation to go through on your end, but like to be able to like explain it in such a crazy real world scenario, like I think, I mean, it's really cool to like hear that process.
Yeah, it was definitely like, it was one of the best lessons that I'd ever learned. And they do come from hardships, and they do come from those failures. You go back to the drawing board, you debrief, and then it obviously gives you that tool in your cabinet to dive in. And that's, I think, why I won so many world titles afterwards. And then even the freestyle element and learning these tricks now goes back to that. So yeah, I think
you have to visualize yourself landing those tricks.
Yeah, and like I use it every week. Like this week I've been up training with R. Willie and like riding his compound and doing some big Superman seat grabs and tricks like that. And I would have never believed, like from that race girl at 9 years old, where I never took my hands off the bars. I was that A to B racehorse. Yeah, like the things that get me through is really like when you do have those negative thoughts that pop in, because it's going to happen. It's like I have that shift. It's like I could roll in. It's a little bit windy. Do I have to? Like, you know, you rest on your laurels, you go into fear state. When you have, like, for me, what Nam said is like when you tap so much into that why, and then I've done that and I've tapped it and I've ingrained it. When I'm aware of like those negative thoughts that come in, or like you visualize yourself crashing. Oh, when's I missed the seat? Oh my God, it's 13-meter fall off the airbag. Oh geez, like J.O. Archer just passed away. Oh, like it's real. These are real thoughts. When you actually go, no, I'm guided and protected. Why am I doing this? Like, I do it because I love it. Like, I'm a generational talent. Like, I love the struggle and the competition. You know, and you just, for me, when I like dive back into the why, it's like, you know what? I love the struggle. I love the competition. I love this challenge. Like, I do this because I love it. And then you just like, back to the process.
Yeah. No, it's honestly cool to hear. And so you have that Olympic Games, and then you go on a bit of a run after that.
Yeah, like a 10-year run. Like,
that's insane.
Yeah, it was like 32 World Cup wins for BMX. I was living out of America. I was literally on the road, just on this like cycle. That was, the bulk of my success. 8 world titles over 2 different disciplines in 2 different sports. And the year after the Olympics, it was like, I was so devastated. Like, bawled my eyes out on the finish line in London, and like wore the heart on my sleeve for Australia. I thought I'd let everyone down. You get home from Olympic Games, social media, like having comments like, you know, you're a waste of taxpayers' money because Australian sport's funded on tax money. Like, it's ruthless. So, you know, I just like, you just take all of that, and I actually set this wild goal, and it was to win 3 world championships in 3 different sports over 3 different countries, 3 energy systems in like 72 days. And set that goal because I was like, if I can deal with that threshold of stress, I'm going to be ready for like the Rio Olympic Games. Yeah. So like went to the first one, which is the BMX World Championships in New Zealand, won that. Went over to the Downhill World Championships in South Africa, case 1 jump, got 5th. But it was like epic, like unreal. Went to the 4-cross World Championships in Austria, won that. Walked away, 2 different disciplines, 2 world titles, broke history, like Nickelodeon Choice Awards, Australian cyclists, like on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, people are getting tattoos on them, like signing like some fan's wife's G-string. Like, it was just this whirlwind of like, what's happening? But yeah, it's like I just leveled up and was like, I really want to be able to handle this like threshold. And then, walked away with 2 world titles that year from an insane goal.
That's awesome. So you were 18 when you moved to the States, basically?
18, global financial crisis. Dad helped me like move over, and the first house we looked at, which is actually Andy Buckworth's house today. So
I know. Yeah.
He's a nitro circus, like action sport, monster athlete. He now lives in it. And his backyard has got Justin Bieber's ramps in it now. But yeah, so he ended up buying the house off us. We got that. It was $170,000.
You would have got it for a steal.
It was off the bank. Yeah, it was like, take a pick.
Yeah.
Four houses in this cul-de-sac. And I look back now and I'm like, buy a house for $170,000? Like,
that's when I moved over there. Same time, basically. Well, very similar. And yeah, the houses were just insanely cheap because everyone had foreclosed on their houses.
Super sad moment, but luckily, right timing, cul-de-sac.
And the Australian dollar was like $1.40.
Yes. Yeah. I'm really, really grateful that like I wanted to move anyway. Good block, good location, pretty close to Temecula, which is like where a lot of the moto world is, and made some really good friends like Robbie Madison and their family that would always pick me up and use all of their recovery tools and things when I would like have some major crashes. So yeah, it was a very like supportive environment over there.
What made you think that you needed to move over there? Just like, all right, I got to get in the thick of it, easier for travel. I think it's maybe one of the harder things for Australian athletes is just like dealing with the travel. If everything's either in America or Europe, you're up for 14 or 24-hour flights basically.
Yeah, easier to travel. A lot of events were in South America, a lot were in Europe, a lot were in Canada. The actual US race circuit was really good for prize money. The industry was there. I also think like one of my mentors, Robert D. Costella, marathon runner, to kind of get away from a lot of the distractions of Australia or like family or things like that. Like it had its purpose and its time frame as an athlete. So yeah, like moving over there, I think at the time was good. Now you can be an athlete really from anywhere. But at the time it was what's needed, and trained at the W training facility, which all of the moto athletes. So you're just surrounded by like-minded industry people. Yeah.
And it's such a great learning experience too, to be like super young and just over fending for yourself, like making shit happen.
Thrown in the deep end, literally. Yeah, figure it out.
What was your favorite part about living in the States?
It was pretty awesome. I think the mentality of Americans is so different. Like, there's no tall poppy kind of Australian vibe. It's like everyone's so hyped on your success and everyone's building each other up. On any given day, anyone's like, let's go to Big Bear to the snow, or like, let's ride motos across to the beach and we'll visit Oakley and we'll go ride some dirt jumps. And I think there was just like that culture of people wanting to do everything. It was really good too, because I tapped into the US training facility and trained with them. So that was also like right on the border of Mexico, down in San Diego. And that was like my weekly go-to, going down, and I was basically a sparring partner for the US program, but it was a huge benefit to me. They were one of the best programs in the world at the time. So drive into the US Olympic training facility and like sign in. It was like, you go to war with them.
That's sick. I didn't know that was in California.
Yeah, it's their whole OTC, they call it. So it's more track and field based. But yeah, really big Olympic training facility. And they actually had the Beijing replica track, and then they also had the 2012 replica track. So they built these courses to replicate the games, which is rad now to see. Like the BMX program here in Australia, they're replicating here on the Gold Coast at Metricon Stadium. Like, they're replicating the Olympic courses. And yeah, I love to see the support of like what Australian cycling is now doing for our athletes to remain in Australia and to like have those facilities.
Yeah, because think about what that does when you can basically just train your Olympic run for like years. As soon as the course comes out, you can just, exactly what you're doing. Think about the level that pushes the sport to.
Yeah. I think that's why we're seeing like just the insane ability to dial those runs, because they're doing it day in, day out. They've got that instant video feedback. There's the support of like the Queensland Academy of Sport right there. So yeah, tapping into the communities and everything from recovery to biomechanics to analysts with the footage. If they want that resi mat brought in, a bit uncomfortable to do this, it's like they bring that resi mat in. They have that safety, dial it, pull it away, have the ability to like change a course around if they need to set it up for like a future course to replicate it. It's cool.
That is crazy. So what was the experience like though of the games, like competing aside, just to actually go and be an Olympic athlete?
Crazy. I had a wild experience. Probably like one of the biggest growth of my social media was from, I guess you could say, like a borderline almost like controversial post. So it's funny if you like Google like Caroline Buchanan Olympic Games like condom story. It was like literally how my social media went boom, and I was just like a bystander to the Olympic Games. So I get to the Olympic Village and I was like, what the hell? And you get there and there's this box and it's like kangaroo condoms for the gland down under. And I was like, that's pretty funny. And I was like, so I took a tweet and I was like, took a photo and I said, wow, rumors are true, #AthleteVillage. And
I remember this actually.
So
now
then
that you say this.
There was 2 different brand, like Olympics, partnerships, like everything. There was 2 different brand condoms in the bin. And so one was like the official partner of the Olympic Games sponsoring Australia, and then they'd ran out. This was week 2 of the Olympic Games. So they'd ran out. So they just threw in this other brand. And I've just like put up this like really like fly on a wall, haha, rumors are true. Next minute it's like Hollywood News, like Caroline, like, Buchanan tweets this photo from the Olympic Games, and my social media is just like, boom. The media liaisons from, like, the Australian Olympic Committee were like, you are not allowed to post anything. Don't be on your phone. Like, you know, this isn't bad, but I'm just, like, watching the numbers, like, what? It's a really cool exposure. But that was, like, yeah, the Olympic Games platform is insane. So that was week 1, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is crazy. You know, and then David Beckham and all that scenario, and then you're racing. The next wild experience was like, I finished the Olympic Games. I'm devastated. Like, I'm the favourite. I've put all my hard work into it for years. I lose, and I'm like bawling on the finish line. Well, one of those things, like, you never know what's going to happen. This is one of those craziest stories of my career. There was an Aussie billionaire who owns an island in the crowd. Didn't know he was there. So I get this call up from, like, one of the War brothers, and he's one of the athlete liaisons in the village. So the next day, my coach says, hey, one of the War brothers wants to take you to, like, Starbucks outside the village tomorrow. Someone wants to meet you. Someone was in the crowd yesterday, and, like, you know, they want to support your career, and, like, they saw how devastated you were. And I was like, is this fine? Like, sounds really dodgy.
This is weird. Yeah.
Walked over into, like, Starbucks, met this Aussie billionaire, and he's like, look, you know, I saw the heartache you went through. Like, you know, I know you're the favourite, that dedication. And he's like, I know how much it means to you. I want to give you $50,000. Email me. Let's walk. And I'm like calling my dad and parents back in Australia afterwards. And I'm like, can you research this guy? Is this, like, legit? And Dad's in IT. Yeah. And he's like, it's legit. The guy owns an island and this and that. And I just was like, that's the power of the Olympic Games. And
yeah,
I think between that moment of realising, like, win, lose or draw, it's all about fighting fair, and it's really about the inspiration that it builds. Like, sport is a global language, and it's that inspiration, that the rock and the ripple of what it has and the effect of people. So I saw then of going, wow, the Olympic Games, that Olympic spirit is beyond a gold medal. And going into my second Olympic Games of Rio, like, the next absolute Olympic moment I ever had was, unfortunately, like, I was squeezed between 2 Russians in the semi-final. We all saw the Icarus Russian documentary. If you haven't, Icarus on Netflix. So I get
bad year, bad time to compete in the Olympics.
So I get cut off by 2 Russians either side of me. Case the first jump, my bars move all the way forward, and I'm like trying to ride the first straight in just like full Chicago. Jackknife, crash in the first turn, I'm out. Again, favourite, out in the semi-final. It's like, what is happening? Go up to the stands. I'm like, again, devastated. Just bawled my eyes out. I'm like, I've blown it again. And I go up to the stand, and all of a sudden it's like the 2-time Olympic champion, Mariana Pajon from Colombia. She's like the queen of BMX. We've always had like insane rivalry, but like respectful passes, respectful rivalry. So I'm standing up, and I like get up into the stands. I have the Australian flag around me, and like a wall of just Colombians all stand up. It's like before the finals even started, and I get this full standing ovation, like cheer, claps, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, wow, like again, like whether I'd won that gold medal, yeah, it would have been a cheer crowd, but then I've crashed out, but I've like been that competitor, and like that's what Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the Olympic Games, said. It's like about fighting fair. It's in the journey, and it's in the spirit of the games. I was like, this is another Olympic moment. Like, this is the wild power of sport and like uniting a world, and like why we're here. And I was like, damn, this is my Olympic moment. I'm not even worried about the medal anymore.
That's cool. I just got goosebumps thinking about that. It's so true.
Yeah.
Like, I remember being so excited to watch the Olympics as a kid in Australia, you know, like whatever, Channel 7, fucking win, whatever it was on. And yeah, just like cheering for Australians. And it's like this, whether it was the swimmers or it was the gymnastics or it was the sprinters or the cyclists, like it just was so, it brought like the whole country together for like those 2 weeks. And I mean, granted it got lost on me a little bit as I got older and busier and whatever. But I think for so many people, still like that Olympic spirit, like you can feel it like in your living room in Australia, thousands of miles away from wherever the events are actually taking place. And you're right, it's like it's those moments that you do remember, win, lose or draw, like you're still giving people that moment.
Yeah, it is. It's that language that the world speaks. And I really think Paris, the last Olympics was obviously weird. It was COVID, but I think for everyone watching like the Paris Games, it's going to be broadcasted 24/7 for all the sports. And yeah, it's a really different games. Like they're utilizing 95% of existing facilities. So they're really like diving back in. They've made this whole urban hub of all the action sport events all in one facility. So yeah, I'm excited to be sort of running around and interviewing skate and freestyle BMX and getting those stories and then co-commentating for the race. So being that analyst and just chiming in sort of, why Sayus Kakibara is winning by 2 bike lengths, or, why Isaac Kennedy, is warming up like that, and just having that bit of analyst and insight for Australia.
Is Saya going to be a favourite, you think, this year?
Definitely. So the program, we actually just won, which is unheard of, the under-23 women world tour, the under-23 men, the elite women and the elite men, all Australia.
No
so
shit.
Clean sweep, the Australian program has basically got the depth. So I really feel like with Isaac Kennedy just winning the overall world tour, he's sort of come back off injury. He won his first World Cup this year, and I really think he's a favourite coming into this Olympic Games. And then with Saya as well, she's gone through her trials and tribulations, but yeah, she's come back from concussions, she's come back from injury, she's come back from her brother having a really bad accident as well. And when Saya's cool, calm and collected, like she's going to be another favourite for Australia. So pretty cool games.
Man, that's so cool. And so there was really that much fucking going on in the Olympic Village though.
Well, I don't know. They ran out. I'm a bystander. I was just a bystander.
Because I remember that. I remember that fully. Like I remember that story now that you were saying it. But I guess no one, the general public, was probably very shocked to be like, oh wow, there's just all of these super freak athletes just going there getting their absolute freak on.
Maybe. I guess that's why it blew up. But I was like, oh, okay. The power of Twitter, and next minute it's Hollywood News with your face. I was like, epic.
Did you and you probably couldn't do like interviews and shit like that, eh?
Afterwards, yeah. So then it just tapped back into the actual race, and yeah, when you do the racing, you come through like the feed zone at the finish, but it was very much like you're media trained. You know what to say, when to say it.
So you weren't like calling into E and shit.
Oh no, I wasn't allowed to do any of that.
Imagine. Have you been following Supercross at all this year?
A little bit when it comes on, yeah. Like from training with all those guys and having like that star Yamaha team and seeing like Swanee come in daily with like Plessinger, like I got to know a lot of them personally. So yeah, when I see it come on, like definitely big supporter, but I wouldn't say I'm an avid, like crazy diehard motor.
Yeah, fair. Cameron McAdoo this year, he basically got his whole junk ripped out. Like the pants, like the handlebar just come down, ripped open the front, and he raced an entire main event with like just his junk out everywhere. And like TMZ, Barstool, like everyone was posting. It was like maybe the most viral moment that Supercross has ever had. But yeah, he was like, nah, I'm not, that's not my brand, I'm not going on. I was like, dude, you need to go on these shows, you know? But it's funny how like those are the moments that blow shit up. You know, you're like, hey, we're like fucking awesome. Look at how good we are at this crazy hard thing that no one else in the world can do, but they want to talk about frangers.
Yeah, it is. It was just that pivotal point. Like, yeah, glad of it because it helped build that insane social media following at the time. That was like early days Facebook 212. Yeah, but I've always stayed pretty true to like not selling out to skinny me tees, and I've been very like authentic to like my brand and reputation, and being obviously like on the box of like Nutri-Grain Girl, like in the cereal aisle, and then obviously like Boost Mobile, and having all these brands that I represent. Like one of my major partners, love them, Nobby. They're a subscription underwear company. I was like, hey guys, like I'm never actually going to be in my underwear. Like you'll never see my ass. That's like 101. And they're like, yeah, cool, we like that. And still get like their highest reach on Reels when we collab together. So it's, yeah, there's a way you can do it, and how you do anything is how you do everything. So it's like I definitely stand by like laying out like the rules to like steering your brand in your direction. And like I think that's sort of why now, and what I say to like so many of my Ignite girls that I support through scholarships, I say be consistent, be authentic, be unique, but you know, you set the rules for like your brand and your future. So try to make them like be in the driving seat.
Yeah, it's cool that you say that actually, because I was reading an article on Stab Mag the other day, you know, like the surfing magazine, and they basically were talking about, I guess, like just the sexualization of surfing. So like in that same period that you're talking about, like 2010 to 12. So a friend of mine, he's actually married to Alana Blanchard, and you would have remembered Alana, right? Like, granted, surfing's a weird one, right? Because they're in their bikinis to surf. So you're not racing a BMX bike in a bikini. So it
That'd be some
kind of
gnarly gravel rash.
yeah, but so you just by like doing your sport, you're in this kind of like weird gray zone of like sexualization. Anyway, you know what I mean? Because it's like the lifestyle of surfing is you're in your bikinis and you go surfing. And so she became a global superstar for just being like young, blonde, and hot. And you would see so many women in sport around that time. Like it kind of, I mean, women's sports weren't that big initially either, you know? So it's like as the sports start getting bigger and then you start getting these brands that, you know, that like sex sells. And especially as a guy, my Instagram, like I'm fucking married. I don't follow any girls, none of that shit. My explore feed, still girls. Like it does not matter. It's insane.
I think it's really changed now that, you know, the narrative has changed. And I think so much of like what you've seen with the Matildas and some genuine like women's sport teams, they get organic coverage that's way more than the men. So I think, yeah, it's like been a long time coming, but that narrative is like flipped. And I really noticed like probably around 10 years ago, changing the narrative to like major companies. So I remember going to Harley Davidson and being like, look, you are currently selling like, this is your target audience of like males, sort of 20 years old through to like 45. This is my demographic. This is like my biggest audience of like who follows me. But they'd always just be in this mindset of like, oh, well, if we're selling to this person, we need to promote with this like tattered macho, like man, like, yeah, Harley. And I was like, oh, like, why don't you like change it a little bit? And like, you're promoting a learn a legal bike. I've never rode. I want to get out on the road, so I'm going to get my license. And then they would just like flip the script and they realize like, oh, actually, like if we promote with a girl and this is like so organic and authentic, like your audience is our target audience. We've never like flipped the narrative for that. So I think, yeah, there's been like a huge change from like the marketing perspective of like realizing that like, yeah, women have so much of a value outside of just like the sexualization of that. And yeah, like it's really rad to see that like women are being supported for who they are and what they do and, you know, what they're doing on the field, and they can authentically be their 100% true self and show up as themselves, which is sick.
Yeah, it is, eh? And like to get back to the surfing thing, it's like you saw this like cycle in surfing. So it was just like it was like hypersexualized, and the brands went all in on it, and like the girls themselves, like I don't, you ever remember her name was like Anastasia someone, and she went like crazy viral on Instagram when like twerking was first a thing, and she did like the twerking warm up before like a surf, and she was fucking hot, and she's like fully, you could still look it up, it came up on this article. But you can see she was like, had headphones on. She's in this tiny little bikini. She's got her surf rashy on, about to go out in a world, like a WCT event. And she's fucking twerking in the warm up on the live stream. Goes like insanely viral. She was doing mega brand deals out of it. Like, so the cool thing with you is like, you're also a objectively good looking woman who's also an athlete. And it's like, there is a lot of money to be made on your end if you do lean into that. you know, and it's like,
kind of yes and no. I've seen both. I think if you want maybe like quick fame,
yeah,
quick quick sellout. I think if you're, and like what I say to like especially my Ignite girls coming through, I say, you know, like you steer the ship. Like if you can have those authentic pillars from the beginning, but like if you want that longevity, like with me, 17 years with Oakley, you know, 6 years with Boost Mobile, the owner of Boost, Peter Adderton, he's got 4 girls. Like that longevity and like respect as like a brand, like if you stay true to that, that longevity is going to compound. So when you look at 17 years of Oakley contracts, that's going to be better than one wild payout for some insane TikTok viral dance that, oh my God, I got $30,000. Well, imagine that compounded by 17. So I think like a lot of people are trying to, at the moment, be like, how do I get rich quick? How do I invest in Bitcoin? How do I do this? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, it's a slow grind. How you do things, how you do everything. Come back to doing the small things right. Be consistent. Be, you know, whatever. If you want to be the best podcast person, we'll be it over 10 years. Like, continue like showing up and staying true.
No, I completely agree. And yeah, I think that's the, I guess like the point in the end I was trying to make is that it's like, there's so much easy cash there. There's so much that you can just instantly, like the world's set up for it. Like the world is set up for women to make money off their looks. But you've been able to, and you did this at a time when there wasn't ready cash available for women athletes. Like you would have said no to that, and this would have been like one of your fundamental, like one of your pillars early on when there actually wasn't that much money going around. So like you turned a lot of that stuff away in a time period where there wasn't a lot coming in.
The Bumble contracts and the, you know, the OnlyFans and all of that, the Only Sport, like whatever, like, yeah, of course, like when you're at that level and you have like a good organic social media following, you have that authenticity, when you're performing, like that's all going to come to you, but it's like your choice and your decision and your value and morals to go, this is what I stand for. And I even think that too, like a lot of the industry now, like they want to sponsor you from head to toe, for example. Like they might sponsor you for Fox, but it's like, hey, you're going to be Fox helmet, you're going to be Fox goggle, you're going to be Fox gear, Fox boot.
Yeah.
Well, that's one brand. Like if that disappears, like you got to get something else. So I've sort of more leaned into going like, this is my brand, create like amazing opportunities, but go, well, DD components make grips, but I want to ride for ODI. So it's like, I'll run that componentry, but I'm going to run a different grip company. Hey, I'm going to run Fast House gear. Well, Fast House make Fist. They're like, they make gloves. But I'm like, no, like Fist is my family. They're long time. Like, I'm going to run Fist gloves, Fast House gear. Like, and they're like, oh, but this, and like, you know, the bit of negotiation, like, no, this is how it's going to be. So yeah, you know, like that then works for you because it's like Bell helmet, Oakley. Well, Oakley make helmets, but it's like 2 different contracts again. So I really say that to the kids coming up of going like, if you're trying to make a career out of it, like don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't go Fox potentially head to toe because you're going to risk it. Whereas if you can go like, for me, Bell helmets, Oakley eyewear, Fast House gear, Fist gloves, DD components, ODI grips, like they're all competition, but they're all incredible. Support them all, promote them all like family. But yeah, that's 6 paychecks.
Yeah. And it's cool you mentioned Sammy because you've been one of his long-standing athletes.
The donut girl.
One of my best mates, and I run the exact same thing. I'm like I'm Alpine Stars, and it's like, hey boys, just you can't even send gloves, just save them, give them to someone else, give them to a kid that doesn't have gloves because I'm spoken for. But I mean, it's
for life.
Yeah, it's a really good strategy, but again, like that takes you back in yourself to, you know, not take the easy route or, you know, because it's a lot of management at that point. Like, because you're part-time athlete, part-time business owner, you know, and like you're a very, very active business owner. So it's like that, it comes with a lot more work and a lot more challenges, but ultimately, like you can really steer your own ship. And it's like, it's just I think for anyone, any athlete, like you're such a good example to follow in terms of like the way that you've controlled your career, the way that you've controlled your brand, the way that you've produced your own content. Like you took everything into your own hands, but then you also had the results that backed it up and the wins that backed it up as well, you know?
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. Like, it's a wild ride, and like ultimately I do it just because I absolutely love this sport. And you know, I think it's when people say like, when are you gonna get a real job? It's like, oh, I don't want a real job. Like, I love riding bikes. Like, I want to do this for as long as I can. And you know, fortunately enough with like Trek and this industry, yeah, like now it's like you go from bikes to e-bikes, and it's like making like it more accessible. So I think even that, like, I'd love to race more e-bike events in the future. So yeah, the goalposts are always like shifting and doors are opening.
Yeah. Did you ride much outside of Crankworks? Like, did you hit many of the trails in Cairns when you were there?
So we had the first one of the year in Rotorua, and like it's kind of like
last
especially
year,
with
though, was the
last
Cairns
year,
was the first year last year, right?
I did every event. So going for the title last year, it was like, yeah, I did downhill, speed and style, slalom, pump track. Whereas this year they've brought slopestyle for the women in for the first time. So
that's right.
That's a whole different beast. Like taking on those course 9 features, looking at like big 20-foot wall rides, and you got lip on, lip off, and you're like, never hit anything like this in my life. So yeah, it's awesome. We had the top 6 ladies there, and the men actually boycotted that round. So it ended up just being it ended up being like, instead of making her story instead of history, like the sponsors really got around the women and were like, well, the boys have boycotted it. Like, you know, this is a rad opportunity for you girls. Yeah, go and throw down a show. And like, none of us got injured. We like really like took it smart. We laid down some awesome runs, and it was like the first of, yeah, I think what's going to be like the future for sure. So the goal for me is, yeah, use that longevity and like this more mature age, like process of my career, because I want to be obviously like in the final show, which is Joyride Whistler, like 30,000 people on the hill, pinnacle of sport, like pretty rad moment.
So the men boycott at New Zealand, which was the first round, and then that was also the first round that women have ever been in slopestyle. So yeah, that really basically just pointed all the attention at you guys. What was first of all, what do you think of the boycott? Do you have any opinion around it?
Some of it definitely needed to happen. So I think positive things that came out of it was changing the window of like when they drop in for safety perspective with the wind. So now the flexibility of like doing the competition in the morning instead of like focusing on the broadcast perspective in the afternoon. So I think, yeah, like that was a definite win-win coming out of it from a safety perspective. I think the main argument was trying to fund a bit more support to the bottom end of the riders. So if you've got 12 riders going around the world, you know, the top 6 are making pretty good prize money, but 6th place on isn't. So if you're traveling all the way to Canada, Whistler, Cairns, Rotorua, and you're either, you know, you might crash one round and then you get like last, and then you're like in that bottom end, well, you're at a deficit or your expenses. So I think what the boys were doing was like just trying to bring up the support to say like, you know, if we're investing in this tour, we need a little bit more support. I think they went about it maybe the wrong way with trying to get an appearance fee for a professional sport where you're racing, well, when you're competing for prize money,
a prize,
you know, that's your prize. So yeah, they came to a really good solution, and Crankworks is, formed more of like a travel agent company now. So, you know, they'll book their flights for all the athletes going to slopestyle. And then if you win, your flight is deducted off your prize money. So it's really like, if you have a good event, you're going to get that prize money, you're sort of supported. Doesn't matter for the top end of the field, but it's really helping like the expenses for the bottom end. So they've managed to find that equal ground without paying out 300 grand.
Yeah, that's I mean,
which wasn't going to happen overnight, especially in the economy. And
I mean, it's expensive to put those events on, but it's funny, I followed that whole I guess scene scenario, I don't know, that whole debacle, whatever you'd want to call it, but when I started seeing people say like, oh well, you get prize money, so it's like you want to get, you're going there to fight for a prize. So if you win, like, it seems weird to like pay someone to then get a prize. Like, so if it's just a show, then just get show money. you know. So
Yeah.
I actually hadn't really thought about it in that way, and it was quite. I think it's the right take, you know. It's like, okay, well, you shouldn't really get like an appearance fee to then have the chance at like winning this money. But I do think I agree with what you said, that it's like you should be able to get there without it being because they are then profiting off it as a show, you know. I think there's similar arguments can be made in just so many different sports.
Yeah, they really found like an equal ground because, yeah, I think there is like Freestyle Kings and like Nitro and all these like show aspects where like, yeah, you're a performer, you drop in, you might get $1,000 a show. Whereas like, yeah, when you're competing in like slopestyle and crankworks and things like that, well, you're competing for that prize money. But it really, yeah, the longevity of the sport and going, well, at the end of the day, 12 men are still dropping in, huge risk. It's hard to get insurance, like a lot of expenses around the world. They just needed some support on the bottom end. So I think, yeah, it came to a really good solution. I think they went a little bit of the wrong way about it with like ransom and being like, we demand this. But as a sport, they came united. There was a solid outcome. I just think, yeah, the process of it probably wasn't the best timing with like the world first opportunity for women and doing it at the first round of the series. And I think there's always a way for the voice of the athlete to be heard and, you know, come in with like a solution, which like Crankworks have come up with by sort of helping to support the flights and being like, well, if you're getting there, let's do this, but it doesn't, you know, we'll take that off your prize money.
Yeah, I think you've given quite a balanced take on this, Caroline.
I wouldn't want to run it myself. Good on you, Crankworks. I don't like drama. I stay out of it, but
no. I mean, how many times in how many sports have you heard people be like, "We're gonna start a union and we're gonna do this," and no one ever does it. So like, kudos to the boys for actually doing it for starters, because and it's so hard to get everyone on board. Because you hear it all the time in like Supercross. It's like, they should start a rider union. It's like, all right, bro, you will get one guy pull up to the start line and go and win the. It's like it's very, very, very hard to get like a unanimous, united front to pull something like this off. So pretty cool that they did it. And I think there's probably better ways to go about it, but also like sometimes the squeaky wheel gets the oil. You know, and it's like that obviously been petitioning for change for a very long time and nothing happened. And sometimes it's like, sometimes you've really got to throw shit at the fan to get a reaction, you know?
Yeah. And now it's like the benefit to the future of slopestyle. And they've come up with, a solution that even in the economy with sponsors and the money and everything, it's like, well, it's going to be sustainable all the way through. Yep. And then it's up to the athletes to really hustle their sponsorship and, you know, work on those endorsement deals and podium bonuses and everything else. So it's like, you're not just relying on Crankworks to fund your flight and to fund this and to do that and organize your shuttle and have Red Bull there and your catering. And, you know, you shouldn't rely off that. That's your bonus. That's a cherry. But, you know, all these relationships and things underneath it and your endorsement deals and your signature gear, and you've got that like passive income and you've got royalties coming in all the time. And like, you know, that's the business. Do that, and like you won't be so stressed on that side of ransom demands.
No, I completely agree. And it's like, if you've been given a platform, you know, for any rider listening, you don't have sponsors, you don't have this shit that Caroline's talking about, go to your contact. If you ride Crankworks, go to them and say, hey, give me some numbers. Help me sell. Like, what do I need to know? Like, how much is this? How much is a live stream? Blah, 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 blah. They have the data. They have the info. Like, it is out there. They're giving you this crazy big platform. It should be up to you to then leverage that platform. And it's like, you're a great example of someone that's actually doing it.
Yeah, I literally had this conversation with Dylan Devitt the other day, who's in Freestyle Kings, and we were talking about it. We're like, hey, you've got like all this branding and space, like, you know, go and just ask the stats of the show. How many people are in the audience? Like, it's all given. And then take that back to partners. And what I always say is, it's like, don't go to them and be like, what can you do for me? It's like, what can I do for you? Like, what's your objectives? Like, what are your gaps? What are you trying to focus on? Is it content? Is it this? Like, what are you selling? What's coming up? And that's really the role of like the athlete. You're that story, you're that voice, you're that piece of the puzzle in between the brand and the event, and then like you're that driving force. So going to them and saying, what can I actually do for you? What do you need? And how can I facilitate that? It's like instantly they're going to like go, oh, this is different. You're not saying, what can I have from you?
Yeah. And people need to think about what money is, right? Money is like, and this is from that podcast. I'll send it to you actually. I think you'd find it very interesting. But basically Naval says that like money is something that society has given you to spend on the future for something that you did of value for society in the past. That's it. It's just an exchange. It's just an exchange of values. Society's gone, my podcast. Hey mate, I'm society. You've done something that people have found valuable to watch you for 500,000 hours this month. Here is this is what this was worth to society, right? Mr. Beast, hey bro, you had billions of hours watched of your YouTube that was worth this much to society. Here's some money that you can now spend in the future however you want for something that you did in the past. So it's like, what's the key thing here, right? Let's shrink that down. Value, adding value. So I had a friend of mine come to us and he was like, like you get all these sponsors with the podcast, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, how do you approach a sponsor? And he like sent me he's like, I need this. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Like you need that, but they don't need you. Like what, who needs to give you something? Like what are you going to give them? Like where is this exchange of value taking place? And I wrote out a cover letter for him and I'd said, if I was you, I'd do this, 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 and this. Like tell them you'll give them this, you'll give them this, you'll give them this, you'll give. And then all it is an exchange. And then you're just going, okay, I'll give you this, you give me that. Sweet. Every fucking deal that a person does in life, the deals you want to make in life are win-win.
Yeah.
And for my business, there's 3 entities involved, right? So there's me. Well, it's very similar for you actually, but it's like I look at it as there's me, there's my sponsors, and then there's the audience, right? The audience wants content and they want great content. I need money to produce that content, and the advertiser has a product that they need to sell to people in the right demographic. So the demo lines up, their product fits my audience. I need money to make the content. They give us the money. The audience wins. So I win, they win, the audience wins. And then when you get like a Trek or a Yamaha, and then it's like, we actually need your products to make our content. So then, like that circle, it's like just everyone's winning. Their products are getting shown. We need the products to make the content. The audience getting better content because of the support that they gave us. So everywhere in life, think about these win-win deals. Like what is the exchange of value? And I think that if you think about it from that perspective, like it applies to everything in life.
And I think the way in for me with Trek, like I said, the first year, free bike, I was like, no expectations, I want to ride for you. So I'm establishing that relationship. It was like first year, over-delivered, won some global events. After every event, my race report would go out. It would go back to, the team at Trek Global in Wisconsin. They'd instantly see photos, video, here's a Dropbox of content you can use. Oh, we're just going to send that through to our blog person that does the website. Instantly, we've got a blog post story. So brand's happy, marketing's happy, and then it's like, well, if we'll just give you this content budget, can you just handle it? Yep, they don't have to deal with videographers. All of a sudden, you're collabing with them and they're like, oh, well, this is easy. We didn't actually do anything. So you're making like the job easy for them. And then like if they're giving you a travel budget, like, well, make sure you show up at every event around the world, like max that out, show up and shine, deliver. Again, they're going, oh, well, like we're giving you these opportunities and you're taking them and you're being easy to work with and you're delivering time after time. Here's your contract the next year. Here's your contract for 17 years. Yep.
No, it's so true. Travel budget. You just gave me an idea. I'm like, I need a travel budget.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start writing that in. I like to travel.
I'm like, $2,000 worth of excess for Emirates Airlines with 130 kilos of baggage because I had 5 bikes, tools, spares. I'm like, oh.
What's the
Part of the
most
job.
you've ever paid? What's the most you've ever paid in excess?
$2,000. It was more than my international ticket with Emirates. And it was because I had
Oh,
130 kilos of baggage.
did you pay for it before the flight, or you paid for it at the airport?
No, I showed up there and I literally called a friend, called mum. I was
rookie.
like, it would have been cheaper for me to get you to come with me. And you could have free ticket.
Yep.
Could have bought
Yeah.
another ticket and you had the baggage. Yeah, I've learned some loopholes along the way, and sometimes it's better when you have heaps of baggage to fly business because you're going to pay less in excess. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's the old travel budget. I like that. So when you get to the top of the hill doing the crankworks thing, and you for the first time with like the slope style and all the attentions on the girls, are you secretly kind of stoked that that's the way that it went down?
Secretly stoked, but also it put more pressure. And then I was the first girl because I was actually the wild card.
No
Yes.
way.
So I got a wild card into slopestyle because I'd focused on the Queen of Crankworks title the year before. I didn't have super high FMB points. So it was I was a wild card and ended up getting third. So I got myself on the podium, which was epic. Now I'm in the mix and kind of protected a little bit on points for the next round. But yeah, I'm about to drop in and first girl in history, blah, blah, blah. And you're wow, I've experienced some ultimate pressure in my career, and I'm dropping in 9 features. I've got my tricks in my head. You've got 2 runs, and it was I missed so many tricks on the way down, but I was just emotional at the end, and I was that was unreal. Shook all the nerves, and then went back up and tricked every feature, and got that Superman seat grab at the end, and then I saw the scores come up and I was third. I'm all right, it wasn't my best run. I wanted to add a few more things into it with bar spins and a front flip at the end. But I was you know what? That was safe. And I delivered second run. So wild, crazy. Yeah.
That's so cool. And how does it compare to other disciplines that you've been in, do you think?
It's it's super different because I've done a lot of speed and style, which is racing head to head. So it's more like dual slalom. Then you've got 2 trick hits and your score is deducted by your time. And then you've obviously got pump track, slalom, downhill. It's all very much racing. I've never really focused on freestyle as such. But it's good. It's you're just trying to slow your mind down to do what your body is trained to do. There's a lot more time. I found it challenging and exciting to get to a high end of my career, but then put my learners back on and be all right, I'm gonna I gotta get uncomfortable. I gotta crash today and learn these new skills. So yeah, got a coach up here on the Gold Coast, Josh, who works with a lot of the up and coming groms, and again, it's just going, hey, I need a bit of a training map. I need to learn the diversity of tricks and skills to then be able to do them safely on the day as well. So it's crazy. I don't see myself doing it, in 5 years' time, but I'd love to be interviewing those girls on the finish line. So Red Bull bike, Crankworks, I think broadcast and everything is a lot of dangling carrots are popping up with that. But at the moment, I'm just really trying to stay true to the opportunities that are here now and take on a few and learn and grow. And obviously that's the ultimate future.
Yeah, and it's cool because you're getting that real world hands-on experience. You've almost raced every single tour, two-wheel discipline in the more extreme end of, there's obviously cycling and cross country, there's some other stuff, but in terms of the more actiony disciplines, you've really done a lot of them. So to go then into the broadcast stuff in the future, it's got to be a huge asset.
Yeah, well, you know what they're going through, so you sort of know what to ask them. And with some training from Red Bull Media House, they threw me in the deep end in Poland. It was Poland broadcast and Poland in my ear, but I had to interview in English though, and they're in my ear saying, "Take your hand out of your pocket, move the hand closer to the mic," and they'd be come in with 2 hits, 3 hits. That was great, Caroline, but next time, expand it. And you're whoa, lot going on, but that's the best training when you learn so much from physically being on the job and being well, if I don't take that, someone else will. So here we go. Hold on for the ride.
Yeah. And so how many slopestyle stops have you got this year?
So what the year looks like from here is the next one is Cairns. So if anyone's listening and you're in the Cairns area, the next one is Crankworks. So Cairns, Crankworks, and then I head to Austria, Innsbruck. So that'll be the third Crankworks event of the year. Then doing like a Trek travel event. So Trek actually have a travel company doing a road bike tour through Slovenia, wine region, Italy, finishing in Venice for 7 days. So pretty cool. Just like maximizing the most of like I've got a week off. And then head over to Whistler for the final stop of Crankworks. Ideally, dream would be get into Joyride and compete on that level. Fly straight from Whistler to Paris for the Olympics. Do 8 days on the ground there with Channel 9 running around. Yeah, back to Australia, and then it's Swatch Nines, which is a free ride kind of world first event, big content thing in Austria. And then US home, that's October, between now and October.
It's pretty crazy how far your schedule can get booked, eh?
Yeah. I love it though. As you would know. It's all part of it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's definitely like a lifestyle that some people are comfortable with, and some people just could not do that. Like, I mean, I do it and I can't do it.
Love it. You gotta have like your little home remedies and things like that make it feel a little homely on the road.
I have a coffee machine in 4 countries.
Is it the same?
Yeah, it's the exact same one in four different. That's one of my like comfort things. Is like basically everywhere I go, like that probably sounds so lame, but coffee is just so hit or miss. And when you come from Australia, you have the best coffee on planet Earth, and nothing else will do. Like there's actually America's getting better, but
yes.
When I first lived in America, you just couldn't get a good coffee anywhere at all. Even the coffee machines were shit.
Drip coffee.
Oh, the worst. So anyway, that's my little comfort thing.
Yes.
Can you see yourself slowing down with that, with like the travel side of things? Or I think as you get more into broadcasting, it's probably not going to slow down really.
I think broadcast will be like, yeah, still an amount of travel, maybe not as much. I don't feel like I'm ever going to slow down as such. Like it's in my personality to do that. But I think, yeah, like now with like what I've sort of said about trying to give back, and like I know that I have so much knowledge from getting to this point, doing like those online courses and being able to give those masterclasses back. I feel like that's going to be a huge focus. Love to like mentor some like up and coming athletes and actual like manage them as well. I think
you'd be really good at it.
Yeah, it's something that's popped into my mind recently because it's hard. And like I've had 5 managers. I have an incredible manager, Harry Sweeney, at the moment. He's great. We formed a partnership, but they're few and far between and like hard to really build that team. And it's such a big part of them. Sometimes they've got to be bad cop. Sometimes they need to know your worth. Sometimes they need to like help you focus on what really your career is. So yeah, if they're doing outreach and they're like holding a lot of weight for you, or, you know, maybe they're kicking your ass at the same time to get onto things. They're a really big part. So I could see myself sort of helping some up and coming talent in Australia by just knowing the industry, knowing the people, knowing contracts, things to avoid. I've made so many mistakes. Safeguarding a few of them.
Yeah, well, when just at the start when we were talking about, you know, like the more business side of it, like, yeah, you could 100% like manage athletes for sure.
Watch this space. Thank you. We'll see.
Do you think you'll always be a racer? Like, can you see yourself just pulling up at like an e-bike national in like 2030 and just being like, just still doing it? Or, you know, like going around for select world champ, because I think the e-bike thing definitely makes that a possibility. But because is it like the racing that you love, or it's something outside of that? Because you can be an athlete and be a racer, and it's not like the racing is the thing that you love. It's like the training, or it's the whatever your why is. But are you like that? You're the racer chick that's gonna rock up and still want to race?
I don't know. One of my biggest competitors, Jill Kittner, she's 8 years older than me.
Yeah,
She's
yeah, I know Jill,
still killing it. So I think when people ask me, like, when's that time up? I'm like, oh, she's 8 years older. Like, it gives you hope. And I think now, like, the smarter you are with your body, your recovery, like, you have that longevity. Last year, like, just e-bikes opened up a whole new ball game for me and won the cross country national title for e-bike. Sorry, got second at the cross country e-bike, got first at the enduro e-bike. So it's like, I would never do cross country or enduro like without an e-bike. I'm not that energy system. So it's fun. It's like you're accessing something that I never would have thought would be an option and being like, oh, let's give it a crack. So definitely, like, yeah, e-bike stuff, forms of racing. I think I'll always be, simply love riding. So it's that bike therapy behind bars for like whatever challenge but I don't know. I think, there's a certain point of like sandbagging and like when you've got to hang it up, and like I couldn't see myself racing Masters BMX or anything. I think I'll prefer to be at the track with my kids and let them do it.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah,
so
there's a time.
I think one of the first times that we spoke about doing this was like you were kind of on the way back from that injury. How gnarly was that? Like, for people that don't know, and I guess I don't know like the full story, like that was pretty hectic. Yeah,
so that was pretty much 2 years of my life until I like kind of chunk it into like real short form. I had an off-road vehicle accident. So it was like a Can-Am that rolled, and one of my friends was driving it. We're just going down to the campsite at New Year's. It was like no cell service or out of phone signal. We were like 45 minutes from Cooma Hospital, which also wasn't a like trauma hospital. So they didn't have a lot of facilities like Canberra did. So it was like the scenario was like had a lot of parallels that could have gone really wrong. Had a bit of a surreal feeling, and my parents even that weekend was like, oh, we just had this weird feeling something's going to happen. But so going down this fire road, just chilling, like 40k an hour, not fast, but we're just like going back to the campsite, and my friend was driving, and like we both didn't have helmets on, both didn't have seatbelts. We're just like chilling. Anyway, she like clips this little tree stump, goes up an embankment, rolls it. So she falls out, and as I see us like hit the steering wheel, I put my arm out to support her, and she's driving. Anyway, she falls out, but then as I fall out, that instinct of being like an athlete and so many crashes over my career, like everything went slow-mo, and I was like, oh no. So luckily as it rolled, I fell out of the vehicle, but I could see the roll cage about to roll over me and crush me. So I turned my head, and luckily like the lights of the vehicle on top like broke my nose, but I managed to like catch the roll cage. I just remember this like feeling of like bench pressing as hard as I could. And so I grabbed the roll cage, it rolled over me. So I went under it. I had the entire weight of a vehicle on top of me through that one point. So where it sort of broke my sternum, and your sternum's like job is to protect all your organs. So where it broke my sternum, luckily I like just benched it, and I was like pushing as hard as I could, flipped onto two wheels. I remember getting up and being like, the feeling was when you cover your nose and you try breathe through like the smallest amount of air. It's like you're like, and you just have like this limited airway all the way in. But I knew straight away I must have punctured my lungs. Didn't know what that felt like. Never done it before. But you don't have a balloon, so you have nothing to breathe against. You don't have a wall anymore. So your air does this, and then it keeps going. It like doesn't come back. So you have this like constant winded feeling, and then you have this like limited air intake.
Because there's nothing to compress to squeeze it out.
Yeah, so I double punctured and collapsed both my lungs. I'd had what's called a pneumothorax in one. I'd punctured my heart wall lining. So my heart wall lining was bleeding out into my lungs. My lungs were also filling up. I had full pneumothorax in one. I'd broken my sternum completely in half. I'd broken my nose, and we're 45 minutes from a rural hospital. And so in that moment, it was like, wow, like one of my friends, he like drove the car, and then I had another, like my best buddy, and I turned to him and I was like, something, and he'd done his lung before, so he knew straight away. He's like, what are you feeling? And I like explained, and he's like, all right. And I turned to him and I said, I'm not ready to die. Like I have so much that I want to achieve. I have so much I want to live for. Like, It really was. Like, people I've heard now, you make a choice. And for me, like, it was a choice. I was like, nah, like, I want to live. So he did a guided meditation for me for like 45 minutes. In 1, 2, out 1, 2, in 1, 2, out 1, 2. My mum doesn't know this, but luckily he was like pretty high at the time. So it was actually good. Like, he was just tapped in to like, in 1, 2,
he
out
just
1,
went
2.
in that mode.
Yeah, and honestly, like, it saved my life. He's like one of my best friends. And I did this guided meditation, and I like got to the rural hospital, and then they like, you know, they start breathing for you and doing all the scans, and they're like calling Canberra, and it's New Year's Eve, and they're trying to get like an ambulance, and an ambulance wasn't there at the time. They can't lung drain me. So I was very fortunate. Then there goes another hour. Ambulance come back, then an hour from Canberra drive. So 4.5 hours I managed to like focus on only my breath, focus on not panicking, didn't go into cardiac arrest, didn't obviously die, got to the hospital, and then that was when they like did put a lung drain in. I then don't remember the next like 4 or 5 days in ICU. Got stable again. You're just in and out of like, you know, they were 10 minutes from opening up for like heart surgery, but luckily like my heart had stopped bleeding. So it was like, yeah, they're putting tubes down my throat, and like, it's like, you're still trying to breathe. So it's like, it was wild. Recovered from that, tried to have like a natural recovery for my sternum. Didn't happen. Very high risk. Like, you're signing a dotted line of like 50% mortality rate for like if you get an infection in your sternum, because it's like so close to your vital organs. They don't operate. So I had to actually go to California. Very unique. Like, no one in Australia would touch it. So I had to fly to America to get this surgery done. And luckily, San Diego, some great surgeons there. They're like, well, normal open heart surgery is vertical, and they like wire your heart and sternum closed. So it's like, used to it, that's fine. But it was, from mine, it was broken across parallel.
Oh, because of the way that the bars hit.
Yeah, so they didn't actually have like they didn't have like a plate or tools or bolts or wires or a way that was like, well, we see this all the time, bolt her up. Like, so the first plate broke, then went back into surgery, signed that dotted line again, 50% mortality rate, yep, lean in, let's go. Then the second bolt system was like long, and I knew within like 2 days I could hear the bolts backing out when I'd breathe. Because obviously it's not like you can't just throw a cast on an injury. It's like, you can't cast your chest. You've got to breathe. Your rib cage has to expand. So
it has to move no matter what, like through the whole healing process.
Yeah. So it was very like, I was very fragile, like T-Rex. You can't lift your arms above your head. You can't wash your hair. You can't open doors. You can't lift like, more than 1 kilo. So you kind of like, everything is restricted. But basically, yeah, so then went back in for surgery for the third time. This was like 5 days after the second surgery. And they're like, third time lucky. I got 2 surgeons, and they said, we're going to have to like cable your chest. So yeah, they basically like, one surgeon like lifted my sternum up. They threaded wires between my heart and my sternum. They went back through all these existing bolt holes, because at that point I had like 28 bolts in my holes in my chest from all the 2 prior surgeries. And they're like, all right, we're just going to like bolt it, grommet it down. We're going to put this X plate, which is like a bit more enforced. We're going to like plate that. So yeah, plate, screws, wires, and then it's a cartilage. So they're like, well, the cartilage will form around it, and it's part of you forever. You don't take it out. So third time lucky, it finally healed. And the moment that I wanted to return to the bike was when they said, you can't withstand an injury like that ever again, unless it's the weight of a vehicle. So for me, I made peace with my bike. I was like, the bike can't hurt me. Like, that was just like such a freak one-off thing. And the other part was like, I wasn't necessarily healing. And then the point that I really started healing was when I shifted my mindset. I was so angry. It was like 3 surgeries. It's not healing. When I finally sort of said, like, it saved my life. And I had like an appreciation for my sternum, because I was like, it did its job. It protected my organs, protected my spinal cord. Like, 2 centimeters up, I'd be dead. 2 centimeters down, I'd be dead. Like, here we
Yeah.
are. Like, I just framed it differently and was like, it saved my life. And I like, maybe the spirituality side, like I had like a whole different like approach to my third surgery, and yeah, healed from that, returned for a bike, and my goal was get to an Olympic Games again, because I was like, well, huge ambition. But I thought,
Yeah.
if my body is ready and I start, lifting 120 kilo squats and like building back to what you need to do to be an Olympic Games athlete, then I was like, if I don't make it, my body's strong again and I have options for the future. So that's really like a testament to like that 2 years of recovery to get back, miss out on Tokyo Olympics, but then go, all right, like let's dive into mountain biking, and I'm fit and I'm healthy, I'm strong, and here we are.
That it's such a wild story, and I remember that time, like because we'd been talking about doing the podcast, and then I think that might have happened, and then we were talking about doing it like after, but that was a crazy time, and I was seeing like photos of X-rays with Sammy, and I was just like, this is great, like crazy, like
They
you're
shot
like
a few photos when the surgeon's a bit more rogue in America, so yeah, like I put up some pictures of like what the plate looked like in my chest, and it was like Superman, right? You just have this like, and like, just what's inside, just plates and screws and metal. But yeah,
it's so gnarly.
It's a part of me now, so I think it's different. Like I definitely have like a stiffer chest, and it means like it refers up. See a chiropractor a little bit more, get a bit more neck stiffness, but yeah, just have to really focus on my like nutrition and have less inflammation, because I think And actually, the most weirdest one was I couldn't ice bath after that. I just like, the metal would get so cold in my chest that I'd get that bone bruise feeling, and I'd freak out, and I'd like, start hyperventilating. So that was a real reason I got and owed an ice bath. And I was like, well, trauma's like an onion, and if you peel back one layer at a time, you can get through it. And so I just like emerged myself to get better and better and better. And then I stopped being so reactive to that. And it's like, I think it is, you just strip back those trauma layers, and ice baths were like a big part of that, as well as starting to do some like MMA and boxing, and reminding myself,
sick.
like, you're not broken, like you're okay. Get back on the front line, get back racing. Yeah.
How hard physically, like you would have lost a lot physically, right?
Oh, heaps. Yeah, I was so skinny. Frail. Yeah, because for 2 years, basically, like, I learnt to walk. Like, I would just go on walks, because it's like, well, I can't really lift anything, do much, can't really ride a bike. So, yeah, spin classes where I'd just be, like, not hold on to the handlebars. So, went into my hot girl walks and my spin classes with, like, morning
Surprised
EDM.
you moved to the Gold Coast.
I was in California, similar thing.
Same shit.
Same. Hot girl.
Oh, that's so funny. And mentally, was it pretty bad? Like, well, because you went through some personal stuff as well. So I guess like that whole period probably was like the toughest period of your life.
Oh yeah, definitely. I went through like pretty quick marriage and divorce. It was like 60 days, which was crazy. As well as, like ended up moving back to Australia. So after that, it was, I think that's what really taught me, like, the two things you can control, to come back to that, like your effort and your attitude daily, to be really grateful for small things, to like shift what I could be focusing on that day. And I think I really learnt to lead from the bench then. That was when I really dived into doing more with the scholarships. Now I've put in like 130 grand into women in sport around the world through BMX, mountain bike, moto, launched kids books, did more merch with Nobby and Fist, and like came out with all these like collabs. It was just, like had signature products, had a cute little signature kids bike, the balance bike at the time. Like I think you have so much purpose, and I lost my identity, and that was actually a really cool thing. Like when you lose your identity and you have to question who you are and why you're here on this earth, it was like, all right, how do I lead from the bench? How to be, how do you just be normal? Like that was rad.
Yeah, because I think that when you go through, like when everything gets stripped away from you, because like you're not going to be, like you can't be Caroline Buchanan the athlete forever. You can't be the, like even, people are attached to their youth, people are attached to their beauty, people are attached to their job. Like that process of, you know, being attached to things and then them leaving. Like that's what's guaranteed in life, is that things will come and things will go. And that's your life is one of those things. And it's like everything in between that is you're going to have to go through this process of like getting things and then things being taken away. And it's like, who are you underneath that? And I think, you know, like you said, you went through that with your relationship and then with the injury and then not being able to compete. It's like everything got stripped away. And it's like in that time, you were able to figure out who you were, what you liked, what your life was about. And you kind of got to re-architect your life. You know, it's like, it's a blessing that I think when you go through enough hardship in your life, like you could go through another hard thing and you would then be able to like lean on that experience. But it really is those like worst case scenario. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Like that is, if you can come back from that, you will be a better person.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely challenging. You build that resilience, but I remember like I was struggling, like pretty deep depression at one point, went to a doctor and, you know, questioning like, do I get medicated? Like what's happening? Like I don't have an outlet, I don't have sport, like, you know, struggle. And it was actually really good. He just said, are you seeing the sun? Are you waking up in the morning? Are you seeing the sunrise, seeing the sunset? Are you having a consistent bedtime? He's like, when was the last time you did something for someone else? Like, you know, have a conversation with a stranger, like really just human stuff. And he goes, can you do this for a week and come back to me? And I was like, right, here's my training for the week. Just wrote it down, did it weekly. And I came back and I said, far out, I've had an interesting week, great conversations. How epic's the sunrise? How's this? Like, you know, and then he's like, do you still need meds? And I was like, absolutely not. I was like, you know what? This is hard. And I'm like feeling down, but I know I'm going to get through this. So yeah, it was like just some really good doctors that simplified everything for me. And I always had that goalpost of like trying to get back, but I knew it was a bonus from there. It wasn't like my entire worth, which I think as an athlete, especially in high performance, you start, you know, one world title. Oh, well now I need 2, 3, 4, 8, like becomes like, you know, that identity, that worth. But there's so much more to sport and to life.
What an amazing doctor to say no to meds, because it's like you know, you've been through this like life altering thing. You're like dealing with this crazy injury and everything that you've been dealing with. It's like pretty good candidate for like some kind of pick me up, you know?
Yeah. Just lean into life and I'll give you a pick me up. Come back to me in a week. And I was like, oh, you're right.
Did you go through therapy or anything?
I dived into everything. I think that's like, you know, the athlete in me of going, all right, well, if I've got this time off the bike, like what can I do? Yeah, I went to a like 7-day, like 90% noble silent Buddhist retreat in California. Really? Yeah, like
where'd you do that?
It was just outside, like halfway between San Diego to Temecula. And literally like checked in and was like with the monks. And I like swept their driveways for 45 minutes.
No shit.
Mindfully, like you would have like the vegetarian food, you'd get up on the gong every morning, you would do meditation with them. You're living with the monks and the sisters for a week. And like you're with people you have no idea who they are. And you
can't talk to them.
You can't talk to them. You've got like Dharma lessons and you're getting insights into like their mindset. And yeah, like that was from going from this like incredible adrenaline high paced world, action sport athlete, world champ, to like, boom, you're on the bench, you're injured, you can't do anything. So I was like, all right, just lean into that and podcasts and learning to go on like long walks, like 2-hour walks through the mountains by yourself, solo, like slow down. Yeah.
That's so sick. So can we go into this this retreat? Because I'm extremely... I've never done one. I like really want to do it. I do like, even when you say Dharma, like I do a lot of meditation and reading and stuff. Like I'm quite into it. But I've just never been able to do like an actual retreat. So it was in between San Diego and Temecula.
Yep. It was like
do you remember the name of it?
Well, I did one here in Australia, and that was not a full retreat, but it's Nantian Temple. So that's like one of the biggest temples in the Southern Hemisphere. It's near Wollongong. That was sort of more where I
Yeah.
learned like a bit of Tai Chi and a bit of walking meditation, and that was more of like a day thing.
Yeah.
Then obviously I've had heaps of support from like sport, but the US one, I don't remember what it was called, but it was definitely 7 days, and like the it was pretty simple, and they had like simple rules. Even when you'd go to eat, like you couldn't eat until the monks and the sisters ate. You had to like when you couldn't finish your food until they finished. You would like completely slow down. Like you would have to match their tempo. So like the tempo of sipping their tea, the tempo of like eating their vegetarian food. You'd have to like help clean up, and you'd like do mindfulness in like every practice was mindfulness, like from food to eating to cleaning to doing their chores to helping them
Walking, sitting.
walking. Yep. But from like, I think day 2, I was like, get me out of here. Oh, this is crazy, insane. Day 4, I started journaling, and I was like, oh, yeah, you know what? Like, there's a lot coming up. I'm just going to go sit up near this bush and, like, you know, write these things. And then I think by the end of the second last day, I was like, oh, I don't want this to end. God, I'm so euphoric. I'm like, no wonder why these, like, monks sit for days on end. Yeah.
That's honestly so cool, like to hear you go through that process. And so do you know the kind of Dharma they taught?
I remember I just looked up like Buddhist retreat, and just
Okay.
they were like, yeah, Buddhist monks. And it was cool. Like there was about 7 girls and about 6 guys. And we were just in like these little bunk cabins, and even that was pretty much noble silence, knew none of them.
Yep.
We even had some like group sessions at night, which was a little bit more like energy, and I wouldn't say Reiki, but like kind of similar. I know there was a lot going on in that week. So yeah, recommend it. Like completely outside my comfort zone. I remember my friends being like, we'll pick you up at any time. You can leave at any time.
Yeah.
Felt a bit culty the first few days, and then I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah, it's cool you went through that experience. And so do you know, like, was it Vipassana? Was it a lot of breathing stuff? Like, what were the instructions that they were giving you in like the sitting meditations?
It wasn't that full hectic. I think the Vipassana one's like where it's full silence. No,
Yeah, okay.
wasn't like that. It was a lot more like, you know, if you wanted to sleep through the gong and stay in bed, that's fine. But it's like they advise, you know, we're going to do like the morning meditation. It was more really focused on like everyday life mindfulness and being in the moment through working. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you
Sweet.
have? How did you find the sitting meditation? Like, you got better at it? Like, did you have any kind of like, because there's different levels, right? So there's like, you can be sitting down and be like, all right, thinking about no, don't think, bro. Like, you just focus on your breath. All right, in, out, and fucking. So day 2. So if I've got, so like you can be doing it and you can be sitting, but you're not really like doing the thing. And there's probably more time, and that's completely normal, like for everybody. But was there any points where you like really broke out of that like self monologue and in those sessions, and you like really got to like kind of peek behind the curtain of like what's on offer in these kind of traditions?
Probably like day 5, and it was like we did this walking meditation. You had to count your steps. So they knew roughly. So for every like 100 steps, you've got to like put a finger up. So you'd like 100 steps finger, 100 steps finger. So you'd like do this walk, right? And if you're not focusing and you're not like completely mindful, and if you're not just like breathing and 1 step, 2 step, like you're going to lose track of it. But they know. So you get to the end of it and they're like, oh, like what was your step count? You're like, it was X. 100 steps or like 1,000 steps. I'd say it was then the like power of actually like really staying like present. And like from my perspective, like, you know, I'd choked at Olympic Games and mistimed my starts, and like I had some weaknesses in my career from focus. So then I took the high performance route of diving it back to going, all right, now like in competitions, and now when I'm like going back into that performance mindset, like I'm only going to focus on my breathing, but I have some strategies now of like how to do that and obviously stay present to like deliver that gate start or like
Yeah.
silence out what's going on.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you were telling that the story about the Olympics and that gate, it's like in the Buddhist kind of like framing, it's like that's the self, that's the voice that's in your head, that's like the thing that they say is an illusion. And it's like, I think when you fully experience like actual being present, being in the moment, like when it's tied to mountain biking or surfing or skate, it's called flow state. But like when it's that state in real life with just no inputs and nothing to like kind of get you into that state, that's kind of like the point of Buddhism. And or like that's kind of like where you're trying to get to. And yeah, like that moment where you're talking about, oh, I'm thinking about this and the gate and this and that, and then the gold, and I'm going to get this and that. That's that self that is an illusion, that is like essentially just holding you back from performing it, you know, like doing whatever's required in the moment. It's just like adding a layer on top of experience that kind of doesn't really need to be there. And a lot of times, if it's especially like a physical thing, it's like that's just going to slow the process down, you know? So yeah, it's cool that you kind of like made that link.
Yeah, I think life forced me into making that link. But super grateful for it now. And like, I think a lot more athletes and people are aware of going like, if you're going to have like crazy extremes, you know, match it with like more of the Zen and like the power of like both to deliver, not just having like one end all the time or the other end.
Yeah. What was the follow-on effect of that for your life? Like how much did it change your life?
That particular just Buddhist street?
Just that 7-day kind of trip.
I wouldn't say that on itself did everything, but I think that with like doing Reiki and sound healing and going on walks and like diving into like throwing myself in the deep end of events, working on partnerships, like leading from the bench, leveling up in all those areas. I think all of it combined, like once you bring the whole package into it and then you like focus on the process of like recovery, getting back on the bike, trying to be a world champion again, like leveling up, because it's like I could have gone victim. I could have gone, oh, this is me for the rest of life. I'm no longer this. Oh, like all these bad things are happening to me. But I think when you shift out of that and you just go, what can I control? How you doing things, how you do everything. And yeah, it was probably the best like achievement of my life. Was like won a lot of medals, but to just come back, I think, and then be back on that global stage, back on that front line, not afraid, and like leaning back into racing and trying to be vulnerable to go far out. Like I've been out for 2 years, but hey world, I want to be an Olympian again. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, did you get to the point of wanting to quit? Like how realistic was quitting?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I remember, well, it was a bit of the unknown. Like I think first time it's like you're optimistic. Second surgery, ugh. Third, it's like, well, I hope it works. Yeah, I was definitely being like, what sports can I do? Like, can I drive for Boost Mobile and like V8 supercars? I'm like, oh, but my eyesight's not very good. Like, you know, you start thinking of all these other options of like, you know, what can I do that's like not too much on my chest? But then again, it was like, that's like plan B. I tried to like go back to plan A of being like, if I can get this roadmap and like be optimistic to try get back to an Olympic Games level and rebuild my body, mind, soul, spirit, everything. Like, don't forget one piece of the puzzle, because I knew like huge trauma, big accident, lots of time out of the sport. So being realistic with like being kind to the whole package of what I was going
and like
through.
Realistic of like what actually happened to me.
Yeah, so you got to like kind of address all areas, and then yeah, and here we are back mountain biking, and
it's just a wild thing for a professional athlete to go through, you know, like something that's just like, and not doing your sport as well. Like there's probably an element mentally that you had to deal with of like, I got hurt in a fucking 4-wheeler at New Year's, you know, and
yeah.
It's like if you have a crash doing your sport and it's the exact same outcome, which like BMX, you're not going to get that outcome, but you know, like there's probably an element of like, all right, I signed up for it. I knew the risks when I started it, you know, where when it's the way that it went with you, like that's probably even harder to take.
Oh, it was very hard, very hard. And then even to like go, well, all that ownership's on you, and putting yourself in that situation and having to travel out of the country to get that surgery, and you know, it's all cash pay. It's all America. Like I'm fortunate that I had $200,000+ to invest into like my health to literally get me back, because Medicare doesn't cover that. Like, yeah, this is all cash pay. So yeah, it was even just going through the financial side of like, wow, like, you know, you got to hustle again, you got to get back. And it's like a testament to, I think, why I tell so many people who are athletes, it's like, yeah, you do need to plan for the what ifs. You do need to plan if you have this like major injury, if you can't, you know, be supported and you can't make your money from winning races and getting on podiums. Like, you got to have that little bit of a buffer. And like, fortunately, like I had that buffer, and I continued to like, no sponsors dropped me in that 2-year period. We managed to formulate ways how I could still be valuable to them in other ways. Even like I went to Mammoth Moto and sold t-shirts and hats for Fast House, like still added value to that Fast House contract somehow. Like, yeah, like that's obviously what got me back through that time frame. So yeah, to anyone listening, like, have that bit of a buffer in life, and especially if you are an athlete, like, yeah, you got to be prepared for the accident, the crash, the injury, the potentially the bad things that happen that's going to get you through it. And yeah, testament to the brands that have just were like, look, we know you and how you operate, and we're going to stick by you through the highs, the lows, the comeback, and yeah, have these like long-term epic brands that I love.
Yeah, that's so cool. What do you think of Mammoth? I'm actually going to race it this year for the first time.
Good luck. Pretty high altitude, like really fun. Yeah, so many, like between the kids and then I think like the more masters and all those like
vet weekend. Let's go.
Yeah, vet wins, and I mean obviously the vintage bikes, and course is gnarly. It's very ragged, but super fun. Yeah, definitely good luck for that.
Did you ever ride much moto?
Only Harleys. Yeah, really only like bit on the road, bit of pit bikes. I never really trusted myself with that like throttle control and getting too excited going through like jumps or rhythm section. Sort of tried to just stick to BMX, stick to mountain bikes, and yeah, stay in my lane a little bit with them.
Yeah, probably smart. Like, because you've done like how many sports can one person learn and like dominate?
Trying to be smart about it. Pit bikes are rad though.
Leave some for the rest of us.
Yeah, I've got a Harley 2024 Street Bob at home, so that's in my lineup of the mountain bikes, and she doesn't get ridden as much as I'd love to, but love it. Love a good cruise.
Yeah, they're such good bikes too, eh?
Yeah, definitely. I'm pretty OCD with my like garage as well, so it's like everything gets cleaned before it goes in, and my pride and joy, I'm like bikes.
So what's in your quiver actually? Like your bike quiver?
Ooh, so I've got free ride downhill bike, so a 27.5 free ride bike. I've got a 29er downhill bike. I've got the Trek Rail e-bike, full power. I got the Trek EXE half power. Madone road bike. Then my Trek hardtail, my Trek slalom bike, and then 29er trail bike, and then Harley.
That's sick.
Yeah.
That's an intense quiver.
That's a girl cave.
Oh, that's so good.
Loved it. I'm glad we finally got to have this like conversation after all these years as well. It's been a long time coming.
Oh yeah, no, it's so cool. How funny is it to be like, all right, so you guy, you're like, all right, so this is my side of the girl cave, and then you just have that for the little bit of the man cave. It's got to be a little bit intimidating.
Cross that hurdle when it comes.
Oh, that's awesome. So what are you most excited for this year?
Most excited, nervous and excited, I think, going to the Olympics and doing the broadcast. Yeah, excited just to live out like this slope style goal and be a part of history and sort of hopefully make it to Joyride is like that goal. And then, yeah, just enjoying, I think, as well, the level that I've been able to get to, and enjoying that, you know, that freedom, and enjoying the industry and enjoying these racing, because it's like, as I said, like, you invest so much time and effort into like building that brand and the hustle and everything, but it's like you've also got to enjoy it once you get there. So it's a pretty conscious decision this year is to soak it up and enjoy it.
Is that because it is hard to do though, right?
To enjoy it.
Yeah, to like really be present through all of it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Cause
like you can let a big year get away from you pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think the injury and like things that I've gone through and tough breakups, everything, they challenge your ego, and I think it's only the moment that as an athlete or person you drop your ego and you come back into like that moment of like, I just really want to be present. Like, yeah, it's epic that I got these opportunities, and you're on the world tour and you're 2-time queen of Crankworks, and now you're in slopestyle and you just want to keep like leveling up, but ultimately it's like also stay in your lane and just being like happy with like, this is where I'm at, I'm exactly where I need to be right now. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, and because the way that I think about that is it's almost like marrying up the inside and the outside. Yeah. So like how it looks to the world on the outside versus how it actually feels to be that dude on the inside, or that woman on the inside. Because, dude, I mean, there's been times like a lot of the last 2 years. Like I haven't been in Australia for a year. I've been like traveling so much. It's just been a grind, like the grind of all grinds over these last couple of years. And it's like, it hit me recently when I would just have people, especially like coming back to America, I think was like the big thing that kind of hit me, is that there's all these people I hadn't seen in like 5 years, and they were like, oh man, you're killing it. Like, so pumped for you. Fuck, you're doing great. And I'm just like, dude, like, I'm not killing it. Like, this is a fucking struggle, bro. And I think like just being confronted with that over and over and over again, it probably like the first 6 months that I was here, and just like seeing all my friends again, seeing these people that like people I'd kept in contact with, but you're not really like connecting with, you know. And just after like 6 months of hearing how fucking great my life is, I'm like, yeah, like it actually is, and I probably should enjoy this. And it's like all of these things that are stressing me out, and all these problems, and all of the things, because like the temptation is to tell the person how great your life isn't, when you're like, oh yeah, but fucking this, and I've got this, and then this is happening, and then it's like you got all this money coming in, and then all this money goes out, and you're fucking left with nothing. Like, you know, you can explain away like how hard your life is in a sense, you know. But it's like at some point I literally just had the realization of like, well, the life that's kind of on the outside, like that is your life. Like people are saying the right things. Like, yes, this is great. Like I'm doing well. Like this is going great. This is going well. Like I'm ticking goals. I'm ticking box. Am I where I want to be? No. Is anyone ever where they want to be? No. Yeah. So fucking enjoy it, dude.
We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, we've spent 3 hours almost talking about.
I just saw that. I meant to pick up a kid. His dad just dropped him off. He's an up-and-coming slope-style kid, Dane. We're going to go train.
Oh, sweet. Well, I promise you, we're almost done.
Sorry,
but
Dane,
you know,
MTV.
But yeah, so it's like it's trying to, you know, realize that your life is right now, and it's like we've just been talking about all of these, and like have all of your achievements, like amazing 8-time world champion, like been to Olympic Games, now moving into the broadcasting, crazy good business for yourself. Like you could branch off into any direction that you wanted to now going into the next 25 years of your life. And it's like, yes, all true. But is there a lot of struggle in that behind the scenes? You know, so it's like the thing is just enjoy your life as it is now. And like to make, like you said, it has to be a conscious effort to get on that flight and not complain if you got a shit seat, or not be bummed that you're jet lagged, or like it's just those little things that fuck up the vibe and stop you from enjoying this amazing life that you have actually cultivated for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes you got to say no to opportunities and just stay in the moment. Be like, yep, that would be epic doing another week of Olympics, but it would also be epic racing at Crankworks. So kind of like prioritizing like what matters now, what matters in the future, and saying yes to some opportunities that terrify you and excite you, and also saying no to things that are like, oh, that doesn't align with my brand values, morals, or, the program or what's happening. So yeah, fine line, definitely. Yeah. But I look forward to, hopefully helping more of the up and coming Aussie global action sport kids of the future.
Well, you're an absolute legend. We've been wanting to do this for a long time, and just worked out that you're in the Goldie, and we were able to make it happen. So thanks so much for coming on. I hope we cross paths at some point too.
I know, we will.
Surf awards or like Gold Cup? What year was that? Like 2018?
I think it was the WSL awards, or we'll catch up at some events, always between Boost Mobile and Supercars and all these other action sport things. So thanks so much for having me on. And if anyone wants to follow the journey, my name's Caroline Buchanan, or social tags are just at cbuchanan68.
Yeah. And hey, let's actually just do a sponsor plug. We're both sponsored by Boost Mobile. How fucking good is it that Boost Mobile now has eSIMs? And they do the international for the US. Been wanting it for ages, and they finally did it. Sponsor plug. If you're going to the US, you can just do your Boost roaming. Have you used it yet?
Oh, I use it every trip. Every time I'm in New Zealand, back, and then Austria, back. Boost Mobile for everything. I used to have 2 numbers. I'd have my T-Mobile in the US, and I'd have my Boost Mobile here.
And now you just have the one thing.
Everywhere. Yeah, I even go into Coles, get that refurb phone box of my own, and open up my face, and it's a little bit weird. Check out refurb mobile.
That's right, eh? You're on all the refurb boxes. Yeah, I haven't bought a phone in years. Since I've been with Boost, I haven't actually bought a phone for years. I just do the refurb now. It's so good.
Yeah, it is. Very smart.
So anyway, blatant sponsor plug, but we're both sponsored by Boost, and we both love the product. So I just thought we'd give you a bit of an organic, not organic sponsor plug. But anyway, Caroline, thank you so much for doing this. It was awesome.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe. And to listen to the full 3-hour podcast, search Gypsy Tales in your favorite podcast platform, or click the link in the description below. Gypsy Gang.